Chapter 1896. Yin Zhongyang was not as simple as he looked. In the battle with Li Xiuxing, he had at most used 60% of his peak strength. No one knew what he had secretly obtained or who had instructed him. A few months ago, Zhan Wu faintly felt a wave of Emperor's will from the Middle Land. Although he deliberately suppressed it, it still could not escape his perception. The Emperor's will had blended with the heavenly path and was close to the flawless realm. Perhaps because he had been too hasty, he had failed to break through. Later, Zhan Wu secretly investigated and found that it was great ancestor Yin Tian who had done it. Yin Zhongtian's foundation is extraordinary, but his cultivation is not enough to break through to the flawless realm. There should be someone helping him from behind. Zhan Wu pondered. Qin Hao had acted without knowing. Fortunately, great ancestor Yin Tian had failed to pass the tribulation. Otherwise, it might have brought unexpected trouble. If he got rid of him as soon as possible, he would avoid a disaster. Unfortunately, Zhan Wu did not have enough time to find out who was helping Yin Zhongtian behind the scenes, but it was not too important. Under the water of the East Land, there are really a few monsters hidden. Zhan Lu said. Yin Zhongtian had stepped into the flawless realm, so he was indeed a disaster. Then, Zhan Lu took out a few letters and presented them. For you. It will be sent to Sunset Peak in almost a quarter of an hour. Open it and read it. Zhan Wu said. Zhan Lu nodded. Dilly flowed in his palm to erase the remaining power of will on the letters. When it was erased, the owner of the letter would know that it had been opened. Phoenix Flower Island in the Northland, Phoenix Flower Sovereign, on behalf of Daqin Dendi, invites the war god to the Northland to reminisce about the past. Qilin Taoist sect in the Southland, on behalf of Daqin Dendi, invites the war god to the Southland to reminisce about the past. Shuo clan in the East Sea, on behalf of Daqin Dendi, invites the war god to Penglai to reminisce about the past. There were 3 letters in total. When Zhanlo opened them one by one and read them, he was slightly stunned. According to Meng Xiang, the 3 letters were all delivered to the war god guards within a quarter of an hour. However, on the letters, other than the person who wrote them and the location, the contents were exactly the same. It was worth thinking about. The hall fell silent. Soon, the sunset battle god let out a few loud laughs, revealing a faint helplessness. Ha ha ha. As expected of him. With this, even I don't know what his next step will be. Outside the Dao Gate, War Tower and Kuei Han intercepted Dendi. On the battlefield of the Southern Mountain Range, the battle tower broke through the formation and rescued Ning Tianxing. Qin Hao's every move had been predicted by Zhan Wu, and this inevitably caused Dendi to have misgivings. Therefore, he sent 3 letters at the same time, and the contents of each letter were the same. It was obvious that he wanted to confuse Zhan Wu so that he would not be able to predict Qin Hao's actions. According to the letter, Dendi was in the Southern Dao sect. Dendi was in the Northern Phoenix Flower sect. Dendi was also in the Eastern Sea Penglai sect. Where should Zhan Wu go to attend the meeting? In fact, he knew that Qin Hao might not even be present at any of these 3 places. It would only be empty talk if he went. Or even Qin Hao might be in one of them. It was hard to say. However, Zhan Wu was more worried that Qin Hao would appear here directly after he left the Sunset Peak. If he destroyed the Sunset Battle God's lair, it would be a joke in the 5 realms. What are you going to do? Zhan Lu also felt a headache. Go. Or not. I'm not going. Zhan Wu's answer was very decisive. This Dao Peak was condensed by Qin Hao's will of Dao from his previous life. It contains a wisp of his will of the Emperor. He wants to trick me into leaving so that he can take back this will of the Emperor and further strengthen his cultivation. I can't let Qin Hao succeed. The Sunset Battle God was like a child who refused to let his opponent get what he wanted. Even if he got what he wanted, he couldn't do it according to Qin Hao's method. Zhan Wu had his own plans. Zhan Lu froze in place and smiled helplessly. The game between his foster father and Dendi was really... Then you have to give us some instructions. Kuei Han came back from the Dao sect with a belly full of anger. In the Northern Territory, More than 10 divine generals led their divine guards and arranged for a decisive battle with the Phoenix Flower sect. They couldn't keep wasting time. "Withdraw the troops," Zhang Wu said. "This is a deliberate war for outsiders to see. It's meaningless. Withdraw all the troops. And then, don't move. That kid has gathered a lot of experts now. You have to keep an eye on Kuei Han." Zhang Wu ordered seriously. Ancestor Bo Changji, Phoenix Flower Supreme Feng Lan, Li Xiuxing of the Southern Territory, Old Monster Jiang of the Northern Territory, and Ancestor Shua of the Eastern Sea were all famous experts of the older generation. In addition, Qin Hao had a new flawless sword emperor by his side, Sword Master Jinji. If Kuei Han rushed out recklessly, he wouldn't be able to return. Now the forces gathered by Dindi were no weaker than those of the Sunset Peak in Daqin. Zhang Wu could feel that it wouldn't take long for Kuei Han to set foot on the Sunset Peak. "Okay, I'll try my best." Kuei Han was very strong and difficult to control. He was like a barrel of gunpowder that could explode at any time. This made Zhang Lu feel very troubled. In addition, order Cheng Xiang to go to the mysterious Dragon Mountain. Zhuge Xiu hasn't returned yet. Could she have been killed by the mysterious Dragon Great Emperor? Zhang Wu frowned slightly. It seemed that the situation was more serious than he thought. With Zhuge Xiu's ability, she should have returned long ago. Yes, Zhang Lu took the order and left. Among the 5 realms of the Southern Territory, the Northern Territory, the Eastern Sea, and the Eastern Continent, there were experts arranged by Qin Hao in 3 realms. Now the forces gathered were no weaker than those of the Sunset Peak. Even Zhang Lo understood that the Pill Emperor wouldn't continue to hide like before. It was fine if he didn't make a move, but once he made a move, it would definitely be earth-shattering. This was also good. A whole 600 years was too long, and they were too tired. Now that Dindi had returned to take control of the Sunset Peak, Zhuge Xiu and the others could finally put down everything and have a good rest. Zhang Lu didn't know what the scene would be like when Qin Hao returned to the Sunset Peak, or what would happen to the group of war god guards. But he knew better than anyone that his foster father never owed Dindi anything. The 30,000 war god guards on the peak all had a clear conscience. Unfortunately, the majority of the people were kept in the dark. They were merely chess pieces used to guide the Alchemy Emperor. Zhang Lu was also one of them. "It's time." Zhang Wu stood up from the throne. After 600 years, Qin Hao had finally reincarnated and returned. In this life, he wouldn't allow the previous failure to happen again. He must let Qin Hao find his true self. Even if he had to give up his life, Zhang Wu wouldn't hesitate. However, before Qin Hao set foot on the Sunset Peak, Zhang Wu still had some things to do that couldn't be delayed. Primordial Alchemy Master, please browse for a better user experience. Chapter 1897. The towering peak towered into the 9 heavens, boundlessly magnificent. Looking from the front, the setting sun peak was filled with dazzling golden palaces. The buildings were arranged very closely, as if many majestic cities were connected together, majestic and grand. However, the back of the Sunset Peak was another scene. Here, countless rare birds soared. Little beasts carried stolen fruits as they wandered in the forest. Looking around, there were precious herbs everywhere, and the air was filled with abundant spirit chi. One divine peak displayed 2 completely different scenery. The front was majestic and murderous, while the back contained all things. This seemed to represent the 2 personalities of the Sunset War God. The world only saw Zhang Wu's front. At this time, in the endless sea of herbs, a middle-aged man with a strong physique was carrying a huge bucket on his shoulder. The bottom of the bucket was built with a special mechanism. The man opened the valve with his broad palm, and instantly, mist gushed out. A large cloud of water vapor sprayed out, covering a radius of tens of meters around him, drenching the precious herbs in his cultivation until they sparkled and sparkled. The man laughed happily. He enjoyed this kind of rural life very much. There were no disputes, no need to carry fame and fortune. He lived with herbs, birds, and beasts. He lived according to his heart, comfortable and carefree. If the 5 old ancestors of the East Continent saw this scene, their jaws would drop. Who would dare to imagine that Emperor Mu Xinzhao, who caused his family to lose power in the fierce battle on Penglai, was living so comfortably on the Sunset Peak? A figure silently appeared in the herb garden. Zhan Wu looked at Mu Xinzhao, who was playing with water like a child, and couldn't help but laugh. "Uncle, is this the new thing you just made?" "Ah Wu." Mu Xinzhao heard the voice and pushed the heavy bucket inlaid with 1,000-years-old heavenly iron off his shoulder. He grinned and nodded. "Yes, last time you asked me to make a soul protection emperor weapon for Qin Hao's little girl. In the end, there was a lot of heavenly iron that I didn't use. It was a waste to keep it, so I made a bucket on a whim. Greetings, Lord War God." One old and one young. Two figures put down their work and bowed to Zhan Wu. Yao Lao, it's been hard on you all these years." Zhan Wu sighed. Back then, when the Divine Palace showed signs of opening, Hexenke sent Xing to the East Continent, saying that she was going to meet with an important old friend. This person was very important to Qin Hao. Xing agreed without hesitation and rushed to the East Continent, so she did not follow Yi Shuihan and the others to participate in the assessment of the Divine Palace. Yao Lao was worried, so he came with Xing. In the end, when they arrived and saw Zhan Wu, the two of them were scared out of their wits. It was a feeling that ordinary people could not understand. The #1 martial artist in the divine wilderness was right in front of them. It was like a dream, causing them to feel immense fear. Later on, Zhan Wu told them many things and brought them back to Sunset Peak. After living here for dozens of years, they slowly got used to it. Now, from Zhan Wu, they didn't feel the slightest bit of power that the world spoke of, only a sense of familiarity. In terms of hard work, what we have done is far less than 1/10,000th of what you have done, Yao Lao said sincerely, looking at the sunset battle god with eyes full of respect. He knew what Zhan Wu had done for Qin Hao. Humph! In the distance, a cold snort sounded. Zhan Yu was bare-chested, waving a hoe in his hand. He was in the middle of replanting the soil used to cultivate medicinal herbs. He had lived here for 20 years. After Qin Hao was killed by the battle tower in the Valley of the Gods, he had captured him and brought him here as a volunteer. Now, Zhan Yi knew that the sunset battle god was not Denda's mortal enemy. On the contrary, the battle god had always been helping Dendi. Even so, Zhan Yi was still unhappy. Why did he have to capture him? Wasn't it better to capture Caiogua and Yi Shuihan? Zhan Yi really wanted to return to the outside world and follow Qin Hao to do great things. Even if it was just acting, it was better than facing flowers and herbs all day. It was too much of a waste of his ability. What are you snorting for? You can't even take a punch from me. With your looks, you still have the face to be Zhang Lang's descendant? Mu Xinzhao said, pouring a bucket of cold water on Zhan Yi. After hearing this, Zhan Yi laughed foolishly, not daring to refute Mu Xinzhao. After all, this person's status was higher than Zhan Zhu and Zhan Lang. When Denda saw him, he had to call himself a junior. I know that leaving you here makes you feel uncomfortable. It's fine now. You can leave immediately. Zhan Wu said. Really? Zhan Yi stopped waving his hoe and turned to look at the sunset battle god. Zhan Wu nodded. Really? The final battle of the East Continent was about to arrive. Zhan Yi would become a member of the Battle God Guards and represent the Sunset Battle God to stop Dendi from attacking the Sunset Peak. Oh Wu, isn't it time? Mu Xinzhao looked at Zhan Wu's expression and understood the meaning of his words. It will be very painful, but to complete that task, you have to bear this pain. Zhan Wu said. Phew. Mu Xinzhao slowly exhaled. His mood began to become heavy. He clenched his powerful fists and gritted his teeth as he said to Zhan Wu, Come on. If you want to do it ruthlessly. Don't let Qin Hao see any clues. Uncle Mu, this is what I owe you. This is also what Qin Hao owes you. I really didn't want you to bear this pain. Please accept my defeat. Zhan Wu bowed and said. Mu Xinzhao reached out to help Zhan Wu up. His eyes flashed with a complicated luster. How can there be no price to pay to achieve great things? I can only bear the pain of the flesh, but what you have to bear is hundreds of years of spiritual torment. The contempt of the people of the world, the curses of the people of Daqin, and the contempt of the experts of the Five Realms. Have you ever said it was painful? Come on, do it. Do it quickly. Mu Xinjiao urged. It was just giving up his cultivation and destroying his emperor's path. If he could help Qin Hao achieve his dream, even if Zhang Wu killed him, Mu Xinjiao would not complain. How many people had sacrificed their lives for this day? Tens of thousands of people of the Mu clan in the EC had died. Now that he was about to succeed, Zhang Wu would not be soft on him. Buzz! An abundant fighting spirit swept out from Zhang Wu's body. The pure power of the Wei turned into countless rays of light that danced in front of everyone's eyes. In an instant, Xing Yao Lao, and even Zhang Yi in the distance felt as if their bodies had been shattered. They could not help but retreat from this area. Zhang Wu raised his palm, and a radiance containing an unparalleled, overbearing battle intent covered Mu Xinjiao's head. Millions of dazzling particles swallowed Mu Xinjiao, and streams of blood sprayed out from the radiance. Even though Mu Xinjiao had gritted his teeth and endured it, there were still extremely suppressed cries of pain coming from within. Just hearing this sound made Xing Yao Lao and Zhang Yi feel a chill run down their spines. Chapter 1898. The pain didn't last long. Soon, as the light particles disappeared, Mu Xinjiao, who had been full of energy a moment ago, lay paralyzed on the ground like a pile of mud. If it weren't for the weak aura coming from his body, he would be no different from a corpse. Yao Lao looked at this scene and felt his heart clench. His emperor bones were shattered and his veins were destroyed. In the blink of an eye, a true self-cultivator with perfect Tao had become a cripple. Other than the emperor's ring, Mu Xinjiao's life was completely over. Xing was also greatly shocked. Her eyes were filled with sadness. She couldn't bear to look at Uncle Mu's miserable state. How much courage did it take to give up his emperor's path cultivation? She hoped that the young master wouldn't disappoint these people. Awesome. I've never felt this relaxed before. It's like a heavy mountain has been removed from my body. It's so comfortable. Ha, cough. Mu Xinjiao lay on the ground with his head tilted to one side. His veins and bones were all destroyed. Even turning his neck was an extravagant hope. Zhang Wu shifted his gaze away from Mu Xinjiao. He waved his hand towards the empty garden. Immediately afterwards, several god of war guards in mighty armor lifted Mu Xinjiao up from the ground. One of them pierced through Mu Xinjiao's shoulder blades with a vicious iron chain that they had forged beforehand. Together with his palms and feet, 6 iron chains pierced through his body. These iron chains were made by Mu Xinjiao himself. They were made of precious materials and were even emperor weapons. They had the power to transform. After the iron chains recognized a master, they could connect with the master's Tao will and extend according to the master's will. They also had the terrifying effect of absorbing life force. He named them life chains. No one in the world understood the fear of the life chains better than Mu Xinjiao. Piercing through his body was just the beginning. Next, his life force and the Tao power in the Emperor's ring would flow through the life chains to the sunset peak and nourish the herb garden under his feet. The pain he had to endure during this process was even more intense than when Zhang Wu destroyed his emperor body. From now on, there is no more Penglai artifact immortal in the world. There is only the cripple Mu Xinjiao. Take him away, Zhang Wu ordered. Yes. Each war god guard held a life shackle and dragged Mu Xinjiao into the distance. With a huge commotion, 6 shackles were inserted into the peak-suppressing stone, sealing Mu Xinjiao. That's a little too ruthless. Zhang Yi's palms were drenched in cold sweat as he watched. He didn't think there was a need to be so ruthless. A layer of Monarch light appeared on Zhang Wu's hand and gradually condensed into a dazzling divine armor. He tossed it to Zhang Yi and said, "Do you think your mission is lighter than Uncle Mu's?" Zhang Yi lowered his head and looked at the divine armor in his hand. The design was the same as the one Meng Xiang was wearing. However, there was a missing arrow emblem on his shoulder, which meant that he was 1 level lower than Meng Xiang. If you wear it, you might die. Think about it carefully before you decide whether to wear it or not, Zhang Wu said. Zhang Yi looked at Mu Xinjiao, who was sealed on the peak-suppressing stone. Now, Mu Xian Zhao was covered in blood. Traces of Dilly Halo were slowly flowing along the life shackle toward the medicine store. He knew that Zhan Wu wasn't joking. When he put on the divine armor, he would be a divine general under the war god. There would be no more Zhan Yi in the world. If I die, so be it. Actually, I want to see what kind of expression Xiaohua and Yi Shuihan will have when they feel fear. Zhan Yi waved his hand, and the divine armor rose into the sky and slowly fell down. Suddenly, an extremely bright light bloomed. In the next moment, Zhan Yi's figure disappeared and was replaced by a divine general of the Sunset Peak. He was wearing mighty armor and emitting a cold aura. Divine General, Invincible Blade, greets the war god. Zhan Yi clasped his hands together and knelt down. He carried a huge blade on his shoulder, and the aura he gave off became even more domineering. Xing, and Yao Lao's faces trembled. If they didn't know that this person was Zhan Yi, they might really think that he was a cold-blooded warrior. Go. From now on, you will report directly to Meng Xiang and be his deputy, Zhan Wu said as he watched Zhan Yi, who was carrying a huge saber on his back, leave with heavy steps. Invincible Blade? This kid sure knows how to come up with names. After dealing with the two of them, Zhan Wu looked at Xing and Yao Lao and smiled. No way, even we. Xing took a step back and subconsciously looked at the miserable Mu Xian Zhao. She didn't want to end up like that. It's fine. Although Xing cultivation is not as strong as that of the Zhan family's brat, she's more than capable of being an elite divine guard. You can arrange a job for her and let this old man bear the burden alone. Yao Lao still cared for his disciple very much. As he spoke, he pulled up his arm and rolled up his sleeves. He even directly began to take off his clothes, as if he was going to sacrifice himself for a cause. You've misunderstood. Just keep it the way you are. Only when you're treated like a guest like this will Qin Hao feel that it's real, said Jian Shun. There was no need for the two of them to put on a show. However, their attitudes obviously had to change. I understand. Xing nodded. Her eyes that looked at Zhan Wu immediately became extremely cold and filled with great hatred. It felt like she had seen her father's murderer. Hee, smart girl. You can continue. Before Qin Hao comes, someone needs to look after the garden. Zhan Wu let out a long breath and flew towards the temple on the peak. He had done everything that needed to be done. He only needed to wait for Qin Hao to come and fight him to the death on the Sunset Peak. Perhaps this was the only way to let Dendi find his lost self and fulfill the long-cherished wish that had eluded him for several lifetimes. Many people would die in this battle, and Zhan Wu was no exception. However, he would rather die than see Qin Hao continue to be reborn. Moreover, if he failed again, Dendi would basically have no chance of being reborn. For this, he was willing to risk everything. Uncle Mu's life, Zhan Ye's life, the 19 divine generals on the peak, the 30,000 divine guards, and the Sunset Battle God's own life. Qin Hao naturally did not know what Zhan Wu had done. However, after today, the East Continent once again welcomed a new change. The divine guards of the Sunset Peak that surrounded the north all returned to their base. This caused the 9 branches of the Phoenix Flower sect, who were originally at daggers drawn and ready for a bitter battle, to sigh in relief. Phoenix Flower Prime Fenglan felt that this was normal. After all, that letter was not for show. It was extremely threatening. It was completely reasonable for the Sunset Battle God to withdraw his troops. However, the disciples of the 9 branches did not know that Dendi had sent 3 invitations to the Sunset Peak. Even the island masters, including Yun Ro, were completely unaware. When they saw the divine generals of the Sunset Peak leading an overwhelming number of divine guards to leave the north, they were all delighted. However, the upper echelons of the various islands fell into doubt, and their hearts were somewhat heavy. They nervously believed that the Sunset Battle God was preparing for an even bigger move. It was impossible for him to give up on attacking the 9 branches. Perhaps the next time he came, it would not only be the divine guards, but also the enormous military force of the Daqin Empire. Unknowingly, Zhan Wu's withdrawal did not reduce the pressure on the 9 branches. Instead, it created an even more pressing sense of crisis. Chapter 1899. North Border. 100 Spirit Island. In the center of the island. 100 Spirit Island. On the Spirit Dao Peak, there was a bustling scene. After the 9-pulse martial arts sparring competition, Yin Bao had accidentally exposed her bloodline constitution and attracted the attention of the 5 borders. Because of that battle, Elder Fenghua had met her doom in advance. After that, the battle tower conveyed the will of the god of war. Within a month, Fenghua had to hand over Dinda's daughter to the Sunset Peak. If she didn't, she would have to bear the consequences. Now, the islands of the 9 pulses were on high alert. Many forces of the East Continent that had deep ties with Fenghua had sent masters from their sect to intimidate the divine generals of the Sunset Peak. The West World Immortal sect was one of the forces that had reinforced Fenghua. The internal structure of the Immortal sect was similar to that of the Qilin sect. Many families were in charge at the same time. The masters of the families abandoned the idea of not teaching their family's secret techniques to outsiders and put the high-level techniques of their families in the Immortal Sect Pavilion to increase the strength of the disciples of the Immortal Sect. The tradition continued to this day, and the elders of the sect were also masters from the families. At the moment, many disciples of 100 Spirit Island were practicing array techniques on the 100 Spirit Island. As the techniques flew, the light of the array was sometimes bright and sometimes dim. It was very mysterious. Among them, there was a group of people who stood out. They were a group of men who didn't participate in the practice. They were watching from afar, nodding and praising from time to time. Mother said that the 100 Spirit sect is not only the best in the East Continent, but their array techniques are also outstanding. Today, I see that they live up to their reputation. A handsome young man spoke. His voice was gentle, and his aura made people feel comfortable. That's enough. Compared to the Immortal sect, our array techniques are like showing off in front of an expert. We can't afford to be outstanding. Lilifeng rolled her eyes at the young man. Who in the East Continent didn't know that the Immortal sect's strongest technique was array techniques? It was said that only the Qilin sect in its heyday could surpass the Immortal sect. Other than that, no one in the East Continent could overshadow the Immortal sect in terms of array techniques. This guy came from a family in charge of the Immortal sect and was well-versed in array techniques. He did it on purpose, right? Haha. Junior brother Su and Miss Lifeng have formed a good match. After the storm subsides, she will enter the Celestial sect and become the wife of the Su family's young master. No matter how good the 100 Spirits array formation is, it will naturally be perfect in Junior brother Su's eyes. Beside the handsome young man stood another handsome young man with an extremely outstanding bearing. Compared to the handsome young man, this person seemed to be even more outstanding. However, his eyes contained an icy, cold arrogance that faintly gave others the feeling that he looked down on everything. In this regard, he was not as approachable as Su Cheng. Hu Qinxiu was the young master of the Hu clan, one of the aristocratic families that controlled the Immortal sect. Hu Qinxiu's cultivation was at the limit of the 8th level, and he was only a step away from becoming an imperial lord. He was publicly acknowledged as the person with the strongest natural talent and strength amongst the younger generation of the 3 clans. And even Su Cheng, who was similarly the successor of the patriarch, was slightly inferior to him. Currently, Hu Qinxiu and Su Cheng were both at the 100 Spirits Island. There was no other reason other than Su Cheng's mother was the junior sister of Island Master Yin Ro, and she had married into the West World's Immortal sect. When the sect was in trouble, Su Cheng's mother naturally could not sit idly by. She personally rushed over and brought her son Su Cheng along, vowing to protect the 100 Spirits' ancestral sect. As for Hu Qinxiu, he came together with Su Cheng. The two of them were both the next generation of Immortal sect leaders, and their relationship was naturally very close. However, he came this time not only because of his relationship with Su Cheng, but also because of Yin Bao. Dindi, a name that had spread throughout the East Continent for hundreds of years, was the symbol of the era's experts, and was comparable to the current sunset battle god, who in the five dimensions did not respect him back then. As Denda's daughter, Yin Bao, was born under her father's glory. Naturally, she was blessed with an incomparably noble status the moment she was born. It was not that Hu Qianqiu admired Yin Bao, but he wanted to see Denda's daughter. The outside world had spread rumors of Yin Bao, saying that she had proven her Tao and battled the Archmaster. With her seventh heaven strength, she had defeated multiple Phoenix Flower first seeds consecutively. As the most outstanding junior of the Immortal Sect, Hu Qianqiu could be considered a flag of the Immortal Sect. He also had extraordinary talent, and naturally, he wanted to see if Denda's daughter was as unparalleled as the rumors said. Miss Lefeng, please do not take it to heart. Qianqiu has always been like this, and I have been a little too blunt. When Su Cheng heard Hu Qianqiu's words, he shook his head and laughed. There was nothing to say about this brother's talent and strength, but his temper was not very good. He had clearly said a sentence out of the blue, but it gave off a faint sense of coldness and sarcasm. Actually, he was not a bad person at heart. Li Lefeng pouted. It seemed that Hu Qianqiu was right. She had long been engaged to the Immortal Sect's Su clan. This was a major matter that had been decided in her third year in Bailing. The purpose was naturally to maintain the relationship between the Bailing sect and the Su clan, although Li Lefeng's heart was against it at first. After meeting Su Cheng and understanding his character, she unknowingly felt a strong sense of anticipation. It was as if her heart was telling her that she wanted to marry Su Cheng as soon as possible. Senior Lefeng, why is your face red? Zhu Sheng looked at the distracted Li Lefeng. What was she thinking about? No. Li Lefeng was awakened by her words. She quickly patted her cheeks. It was so hot. When Hu Qianqiu saw this, he laughed softly in his heart. Women. Junior Zhu Sheng look. At this moment, Li Lefeng pointed to a peak. There a figure stood alone. It was as if her gaze had flown out of Bailing Island and was looking at the North Sea. Bao Zhu Sheng murmured. Emperor Light appeared on her body, and she flew towards that direction. Zhu Sheng, wait for me. Li Lefeng raised her hand and shouted. She turned her head and glanced at Su Cheng. She felt her cheeks getting hotter and hotter. Miss Lefeng has been conquered by your charisma. Congratulations, Su Cheng. You've won the heart of a beauty. Hu Qianqiu said indifferently. It's my honor. Su Cheng smiled. He also liked Li Lefeng. She wasn't scheming. She was just like a silly girl. At this moment, Su Cheng's gaze was fixed in that direction. He said, Qianqiu, didn't you come to Bailing for Miss Bao? Now that the beauty is in front of you, maybe you should change your wooden face. Maybe you'll be able to win her heart like me. Boring. Hu Qianqiu said indifferently. Immediately after, Dilly surged beneath his feet, and he flew towards that peak. Hem in. Su Cheng closed the paper fan in his hand and tapped it against his palm. He smiled and chased after Hu Qianqiu. Chapter 1900. The Immortal Gate of the Western Land had a deep relationship with the Hundred Spirit sect. Su Cheng's mother and Island Lord Yin Ro were martial sisters. Both the Immortal Gate and the Hundred Spirit Island naturally wanted to continue their relationship. As one of the leaders, Hu Qianqiu was the only candidate for the Hu clan successor. He would be the future master of the Immortal Gate. If he could marry Denda's daughter, it would definitely be a good story. In Su Cheng's view, both sides were of equal status. As descendants of overlords, Yin Bao, and Hu Qianqiu could be considered a match. Although Dendi was no longer in the world, and the Daqin territory was no longer the Qin clan's territory, Su Cheng believed that Hu Qianqiu wouldn't care about this. Even if Yin Bao lost her family, it was fine as long as she had talent. Of course, she also had to be beautiful. Powerful talent had always been the cornerstone of supporting aristocratic families. It determined the talent of the next generation. The overlords of the Five Land especially valued this. As for other things, the Immortal Gate was strong enough now. Moreover, Yin Bao had Island Lord Yin Ro behind her. It didn't matter whether Dendi was here or not. Yin Bao stood on the precipitous peak with the tip of her foot. Her ramrod-straight figure was extremely pleasing to the eye. As the wind blew past, her hair fluttered, and the aura she emanated was like that of a celestial maiden from the 9 heavens. She was pure, spirited, and imposing. It was an extremely beautiful scene. After awakening her evil force and fighting with Sikong Shu and Lian Han, Yun Bao fell into a coma because she couldn't adapt to the evil force. She had just woken up a few days ago. When she learned about Feng Hua's current situation from Zhu Sheng, her heart was very heavy. Grandma Zhu, Bao, clenched her fist and looked up at the sky. Her slightly pale face showed sadness. In order to stop War Tower, Grandmother Zhu had burned her lifespan, which was already nearing the end of her lifespan. Her departure had planted a wound in Bao Er's heart. Whenever she thought of Grandmother Zhu's kind face, endless sadness would surge in her heart. Grandma Zhu could no longer teach her emperor techniques. Because of her, Feng Hua had angered the War God Temple, causing tens of thousands of divine guards and divine generals to lead their troops to the Northland. The Phoenix Flower 9 veins were in grave danger. Bao was well aware of how powerful the War God Temple was. When she was young, the Battle Tower had left a huge shadow in her heart. And now, because of her, the entire Northern Territory had sunk into a state of chaos. When she thought about her grandmother's death, she was filled with guilt. Bao, your body is still very weak. Didn't Master tell you to stay in your room and recuperate? Zhu Sheng stepped forward to support her. She was very worried that Yun Bao would accidentally fall from such a high height. She had completely forgotten that Yun Bao had the strength to fight against 2 Emperor Masters. I'm sorry. Bao looked at Zhu Sheng with red eyes. Zhu Sheng was silent. She did not know how to comfort Bao. Seeing Bao in a bad mood and become completely different from before, Zhu Sheng felt very sad. The War God Temple has always looked down on the 5 realms. They are overbearing and ruthless in their actions. Even if you don't have Dinda's blood flowing in your veins, they will suppress Feng Hua sooner or later. Your appearance only gave them a more reasonable motive and excuse. You don't have to take it to heart. Hu Qianxiu said as several figures flew over, surrounded by Emperor Light. They floated in front of Bao. At this moment, his gaze landed on Bao. He stared at this girl seriously. Her temperament, figure, and appearance were all impeccable. Hu Qianxiu admitted that Bao was definitely the easiest to leave an impression on and the most unforgettable among all the girls he had seen. As expected of Dinda's descendant, he just did not know if her talent was as unparalleled as the rumors said. Westland Immortal Sect leader whose son, Hu Qianxiu, Li Feng, introduced. Li Lifeng introduced and looked shyly at Su Cheng. This is Su Cheng, the young master of the Su family. He's also senior sister Lifeng's fiancé. I know. Big brother Su, long time no see. You become even more handsome. Bao tried to smile and said. Su Cheng was a frequent visitor to the 100 Spirits Island. It was Hu Qianxiu's first time here, so he had never met him before. However, Bao knew a thing or two about the immortal sections. The Su family, Hu family, and Quan family were the 3 major powers of the immortal sections. It was said that Hu Qianxiu's strength and talent were above Su Cheng and Quan families. He was the most outstanding junior of the immortal sections. He had once defeated a Dao Proving Emperor Lord when he was only at the 8th stage of the Dao Proving Realm. Yes, we haven't seen each other for 3 years. Junior sister Bao has become more graceful and beautiful. It's a pity that Qianxiu, Quan Xian, and I were not present at the 9 Pulse Martial Arts competition. What a pity, Su Cheng said. What a pity. The image of the 9 Pulse Martial Arts competition appeared in Bao's mind. Her pale face showed a touch of bitterness. I'd rather not have a pity. Su Cheng. Li Lifeng glared at Su Cheng. Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. Su Cheng apologized. Some things have already happened. Avoiding them will only make the seed of cowardice grow stronger. The more you avoid it, the bigger its shadow will be. Facing it directly is the best way to break it. Hu Qianxiu said bluntly. Are you teaching me? Yin Bao looked at Hu Qianxiu. What was cowardice? Some pain did not befall her, so it was easy to say it. If sect leader who died in front of Hu Qinxiu and his entire sect was destroyed, would he still be in the mood to talk like this? Bauer was not a coward. She needed time to slowly accept it. She would not avoid anything. If the War God Temple attacked the 100 Spirits Island, she would directly go to the battle tower. Would Hu Qinxiu dare? The meaning of cowardice was not determined this way. Junior Sister Bauer, don't lower yourself to Qinxiu's level. He speaks his mind. That's how people are. He did not mean to lecture you. Su Cheng hurriedly explained. This guy, why didn't he know how to be tactful when comforting others? That's what I meant. If you want to lecture me, then lecture me. If the Phoenix Flower incident happened to me, I would not be as depressed as you are. Hu Qinxiu said expressionlessly. Wang. Threads of dilly coiled around Bauer's body. She stared at Hu Qinxiu with a cold gaze. She sealed herself in the room with a heavy heart. Many pictures involuntarily appeared in her mind. She just wanted to come out to relieve herself. Why did it become cowardice in Hu Qinxiu's mouth? Furthermore, he wanted to lecture her. Hu Qinxiu, if you don't know how to speak, then shut your mouth. No one will treat you as a mute. Do you think you are great? Zhu Shang's attitude towards Hu Qinxiu became extremely cold. Young master Hu, Bauer, Zhu Shang, don't be like this. Li Lufeng saw that the situation was not right and could not help but become nervous. I, Hu Qinxiu, have never thought of myself as great. If it is to guide Lady Zhu Shang, I believe my ability should be more than enough. Hu Qinxiu's attitude was firm. He did not give in to the two girls. Qinxiu, this is too much. Su Cheng said. It's none of your business. Hu Qinxiu spat out an impatient voice. Su Cheng only knew how to nag beside his ear all day long. He grumbled and nagged. Bauer, let's go. Zhu Sheng stared at Hu Qinxiu with a heavy expression. She supported Bauer and prepared to leave. She had never seen such a proud and arrogant person. You defeated 3 Emperor Masters at the 7th level of the 9 Pulse Martial Contest. Are you prepared to escape when facing me? Hu Qinxiu's voice came from behind. Bauer paused and pushed Zhu Sheng away. She turned around and stared at Hu Qinxiu. What do you want? He doesn't want anything. Junior sister Zhu Sheng, bring Bauer back. Su Cheng said directly and pulled Hu Qinxiu's arm towards the Bailing martial arts stage. Hu Qinxiu opened his 5 fingers and covered Su Cheng's hand. He pried open the palm and chuckled at Bauer. It is rumored that Dinda's daughter has unparalleled talent. Today, the immortal sex Hu Qinxiu wants to see for himself what is unparalleled. Su Cheng, get Hu Qinxiu out of here. I don't want to see this person again. Bai Ling does not welcome him. Li Lufeng clenched his fists and shouted. His eyes were red. Bauer had not recovered yet. Grandmother's departure had a huge impact on her. Hu Qinxiu really did not have the slightest bit of grace. He was blinded by his identity as the immortal sect's young master. He took advantage of someone's weakness to request for a battle. Miss Lufeng, do you have a problem with our immortal sect? Hu Qinxiu glanced at Li Lufeng. If this was the case, would Li Lufeng enter the Su clan's door in the future? After all, Hu Qinxiu was in the immortal sect. Hu Qinxiu, you are really biting whoever you catch. I have a good temper. You could do whatever you want. I have already tolerated it. Now, why are you dragging Lufeng into this? What does my Su clan's matter have to do with the Hu clan? Su Cheng was truly enraged this time. However, as soon as he finished speaking, he realized his mistake and his expression changed slightly. Oh, the Su clan's matter has nothing to do with the Hu clan. Su Cheng, do you mean to disband the immortal sect? Hu Qinxiu said seriously. I will not lower myself to your level. Su Cheng was so angry that he turned his face away. Let's go. Zhu Sheng pulled Bao Er's hand. Hu Qinxiu's words made Bao Er's head feel a sharp pain. She suppressed the pain in her heart and did not make a move. She did not want to use the evil power in her blood. She even started to resist. She remembered that feeling deeply. When the evil power filled Dilly and merged with the Tao intent, she would enter a state of excitement. However, her mind would still be very calm. Her thoughts and reactions would become very sharp and active. She would be filled with enjoyment towards killing. Bao Er remembered that feeling. At that time, she would not be able to control herself. She would be driven by the emotions of killing. It was as though she had become another version of herself. She did not want to face such a version of herself. Not only her, if Hu Qinxiu encountered it, Bao Er swore that he would not want to face it a second time. Wang, a layer of Dao light bloomed in front of them. It turned into a huge immortal diagram that revolved under Hu Qinxiu's feet. He released his sovereign spirit. The huge immortal diagram quickly spread in all directions. It spread to the bottom of everyone's feet. Instantly, everyone was in the immortal diagram. They felt that the space was sealed by a force. Come, daughter of Dendi. Let me see your talent. Whether you win or lose, I want to witness it. Hu Qinxiu's long hair fluttered. He stood in the center of the immortal diagram. His eyes flashed with excitement. As a cultivator, in this world, most likely any martial artist would want to fight with Dendi. Hu Qinxiu was no exception. Unfortunately, they were born in different eras. Moreover, Dendi had fallen. Hence, Bao Er, who had Dendi's blood flowing in her veins, was undoubtedly the best opponent. Hu Qinxiu did not want to miss this opportunity. He was too eager to fight with the former ruler of the East Continent. In his eyes, Bao Er represented Qin Hao. Chapter 1901. In the sky above the 100-spirit Dao Peak, celestial light bloomed and swept across, dazzling everyone's eyes. Immediately after, a huge celestial diagram extended from beneath Hu Qinxiu's feet and stretched across the void. Bao Er, Zhu Sheng, and the others were trapped in the celestial diagram, and the space was sealed by Hu Qinxiu's Dao will. The commotion immediately attracted attention. On the Dao Peak, countless disciples looked over. Seeing the people facing each other in the deity painting, they all had strange looks on their faces. Was this a battle of magical powers? At this moment, Hu Qinxiu's expression was agitated. His 8 emperor's rings were all activated. His long hair danced in the wind, and the emperor's will that permeated the air was extremely intense. Dao characters floated around his body. Qian, Kuan, Zhun Li Can. Every Dao character seemed to contain a terrifying array Dao power. Zhu Sheng's expression was extremely cold as she looked at Hu Qinxiu. Being within the Dao will of the other party's deity diagram, she could clearly feel the strength of the deity gate's #1 rising star. Hu Qinxiu's strength was definitely above Zhu Sheng's. The sharp aura on his body was not inferior to Sikong Shu's and Lian Han's. Hu Qinxiu was an 8-stage Dao affirmation realm cultivator. He had yet to step into the Imperial Master Realm, but he was already able to bring about such intense pressure. It could be seen that his talent was very high. Even in the entire 5 realms, he could be considered one of the top. Bao Er was also feeling the will of the way that permeated the space. Her slightly pale face revealed a different kind of beauty under the illumination of the celestial light. She could feel that the celestial painting resonated with Hu Qinxiu's will of the emperor. It was as if this place was outside of the great Dao and had become a matrix territory. The characters of the way that floated around Hu Qinxiu had not yet fallen into the matrix, but they had already brought pressure to everyone. One could imagine that when the Dao character entered the formation and activated the power of the immortal diagram, the pressure would be even more intense. Honestly speaking, not to mention that Bao Er had yet to recover from the martial arts exchange. Even if she was at her peak state, it would not be easy to win against Hu Qinxiu, unless she directly used the evil power of her bloodline. Make your move. Let me experience the strength of Dendi's bloodline. Even if I lose to you, I, Hu Qinxiu, will gladly accept it. Hu Qinxiu said, as the successor of the immortal sect. He represented the face of the immortal sect. But if he lost to Dendi's daughter, Hu Qinxiu felt that he could completely accept it. Bao was known as unparalleled in the world. So even if he lost, he would lose with dignity. When he finished speaking, Hu Qinxiu shouted softly. His body once again released a circle of magnificent Dao light. It was as if a huge circle had fallen into the deity diagram and overlapped with the will of Tao. At this moment, the deity diagram appeared, and the 8 gates appeared at the same time. Qian, Kuan, Zheng, Likan, Tao characters flew out and fell into the 8 gates. The deity diagram and the formation diagram operated at the same time. The light on Hu Qianqiu's body became extremely bright, and his aura reached its peak. "Qianqiu, you're serious," Su Cheng exclaimed in shock. Hu Qianqiu had unleashed both his sovereign spirit and the supreme Tao techniques of the Hu clan. Li Lufeng's expression also changed. She could faintly feel a power that was comparable to Sikong Shu and Lian Han from a number 1 disciple of the Celestial Gate. That was the pressure of a monarch lord. No, the two sides were different. In comparison, the current Hu Qianqiu's Tao intent was even purer than Lian Han's and Sikong Shu's. It was hard to imagine how powerful the Tao intent this person could unleash would be once he stepped into the Emperor Master Realm. Perhaps at that time, First Seat Fenghua and First Seat Golden Du might not be Hu Qianqiu's match. Su Cheng and Quan Qian were only slightly weaker than Hu Qianqiu. The Celestial Gate of the Western world was indeed not to be underestimated. "I'll be your opponent," Zhu Sheng said solemnly. He stepped forward and stood in front of Bao Er. Bao Er's condition was not good, and her body had not recovered. It was not suitable for her to fight with others. Hu Qianqiu glanced at Zhu Sheng indifferently. He did not say anything more. His eyes focused on Zhu Sheng. Suddenly, the deity diagram and 8 gates Tao formation under everyone's feet began to operate. 2 layers of light were released, and an incomparably turbulent power rolled out from within. The word Zhen suddenly changed to Zhu Sheng's position. In an instant, Zhu Sheng felt a suppressive force. Her body did not listen to her commands. She was imprisoned in place, unable to move. Even her divine soul was suppressed by an invisible force. "You are still not enough." Hu Qianqiu was not interested in Zhu Sheng. His gaze fell on Bao Er, as if waiting for her to make a move. "Phew," Bao slowly exhaled. "The power of the Celestial Gate Tao formation is indeed worthy of its reputation. I have seen it today. I admit defeat." Hu Qianqiu's sword-like eyebrows gradually knitted together. Admit defeat? Without even fighting, she directly admitted defeat? He came from afar, not to help the 100 Spirits lineage fight against the War Immortal Guards, but to see the elegance of Denda's daughter. Yun Bao was actually so perfunctory? Then I will not be polite. Hu Qianqiu's expression changed. His hand seals intertwined. Under the guidance of the Emperor's will, the deity diagram and Tao formation began to operate at the same time. The space became chaotic. The sky and earth spun, and streaks of turbulent air currents flew and wreaked havoc. Suddenly, a beam of sword light was born from the deity light. One sword turned into 10,000 swords, arranged into a terrifying sword formation, and stabbed towards Bao Er. Danger! Zhu Sheng was frozen in place. She could not move. She could not help Bao Er. At this moment, Li Lufeng grabbed Su Cheng's sleeve tightly. His eyes were filled with pleading. Only Su Cheng could stop Hu Qianqiu. How could Su Cheng not understand Li Lufeng's intentions? However, if he acted, he would definitely strangle his relationship with Hu Qianqiu. He knew Hu Qianqiu too well. He would not stop until he achieved his goal. As he hesitated, the sword formation flew past with the 10,000 swords. The surging radiance was already in front of Bao Er, about to swallow her. Are you still not going to act? Hu Qianqiu's emperors will firmly controlled the sword formation. At this moment, he was also hesitating. If Yin Bao Er did not retaliate, this battle would be meaningless. Moreover, Taoist Master Yin Ro was extremely protective. If Yin Bao Er was injured, her mother would be enraged. Even the Celestial Sect Master would not be able to save her son. Right at this moment, a stranger arrived uninvited from within the immortal formation that emanated intense radiance, and he actually disregarded the energy of Tao insight that erupted from Hu Qianqiu as his figure slowly descended before Yun Bao Er, with his back facing Hu Qianqiu and the myriad of flying sword lights. Then, this person waved his sleeve behind him. Boom! A majestic and boundless emperor's will surged like an ancient river. It turned the deity diagram upside down. Under his attack, the 10,000 swords were destroyed. The Tao characters exploded one after another. The diagram shattered into a net. With a whoosh, it turned into foam and dissipated. Hu Qinxiu, who was releasing Tao to maintain the operation of the deity diagram, felt as if he was being swept away by an ancient flood. His soul was violently shaken, as if it wanted to tear his soul into pieces. Along with Su Cheng and Li Lufeng, they were swept upside down like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves. The entire world became peaceful. Why didn't you retaliate? The newcomer looked at Yin Bao. His tall figure stood there. He was a head taller than Bao. Comparing the two, this scene made Bao look very small. Bao looked at him. His face was sharp like a knife. His silver hair swayed in the wind. He was arrogant, noble, and had an innate emperor's aura. In his temperament, there was a special perseverance. It was as if he was a reef that would never be broken by the waves. He gave people a natural sense of security. Yin Bao's soul trembled. This face overlapped with a certain person in her childhood memories. It awakened the story buried in her heart. Drip! Tears flowed down her pale face. Bao only looked at him quietly. She did not say anything. She did not know how to address him. Dendi? Or father? It seemed that when she faced him, she did not feel the slightest bit of a father. She only felt very sad. The space fell silent. The scene froze under the gaze of the father and daughter. But standing in this silent world, Zhu Sheng, who was at the side, was scared out of his wits. His body and mind were trembling nonstop. Qin Hao ignored Hu Qinxiu's Tao intent and appeared silently. With a simple wave of his hand, he made the arrogant, immortal sect master's sun roll out like a watermelon. Moreover, the aura that Qin Hao brought was too strong. It was suffocating. Zhu Sheng did not have such a feeling when facing Yinro. In the entire 9 veins of the phoenix flower, she had only felt such pressure from Phoenix Flower Sovereign. He didn't need to do anything, nor did he need to say anything. Just by standing there, he was able to make people feel fear and despair. This was the aura of a true expert. Who are you? Hu Qinxiu stopped with great difficulty. With a face full of cuts, he angrily shouted at Qin Hao's back. Qin Hao slowly turned around and looked at the son of the deity, sect master, with a smile that was not a smile. He said, "You like to fight and especially like to take advantage of people's difficulties?" Hu Qinxiu and Qin Hao looked at each other. With just one look, he felt as if his soul had been pierced through. The anger and courage in his heart instantly vanished like smoke into thin air. The curses he had prepared could no longer be uttered. "Senior, please forgive me." "Senior." Su Cheng panted as he flew over. He stopped in front of Qin Hao and bowed. "I am Su Cheng, son of the deity sect master of the Western world, and Hu Qinxiu, son of the deity sect master of the Western world, are under orders to protect the 100 Spirits Island. I wonder what is the relationship between Senior and Miss Bauer. If we have offended Senior, please forgive us." Qin Hao's aura was too strong. Although he looked young, Su Cheng did not think that he was a commander. He could be an expert on the same level as their father. "Are you allowed to call her Miss Bao?" Qin Hao lifted his chin slightly. Relying on his height, he looked down at Su Cheng. At this moment, he deliberately released his emperor's aura. He watched as Su Cheng's body trembled faster and faster. It was as if he would be paralyzed in the next moment. Qin Hao smiled. He stepped forward past Su Cheng and walked towards Hu Qinxiu. His daughter was bullied. He had to ask for an explanation. "You, what do you want to do?" "I am warning you. I am from the Western world, immortal sect." Hu Qinxiu subconsciously retreated. A simple wave of his hand destroyed his Tao. He knew that this person was ridiculously strong. He was definitely not his match. The son of the Western world, immortal sect's cripple, Hu. Qin Hao stood in front of Hu Qinxiu. He also relied on his height to look down at him. That emperor's aura that almost made Su Cheng collapse enveloped Hu Qinxiu again. "Cripple Hu." No. Hu Shanzong is my family's old ancestor. Hu Qinxiu directly faced Qin Hao's emperor's aura. The pressure suddenly increased. He could not even speak properly. Oh, your family's old ancestor. Do you know why he is crippled? Qin Hao asked. Hu Qinxiu was startled. This matter was taboo in the family. His father had sternly warned all the descendants of the family to not talk about the old ancestor's leg injury. Otherwise, there would be severe punishment. However, Hu Qinxiu did know a little about this matter. He did not know the specific reason, but it seemed to be related to Dendi. Because of this, Hu Qinxiu heard that Yun Bao was Denda's descendant. Therefore, he came from an immortal sect to ask for advice. I had someone beat his leg, Qin Hao said. Chapter 1902. When he was young, he wandered the 3,000 small Dao realms and inevitably clashed with others. When he was roaming the West world, he was lucky enough to meet Qin Hao's group. First, he was defeated by Qin Hao. Then, he was crippled by Qin Cheng and Yu Feng, resulting in a permanent limb defect. Under the divine Dao, the damage to the emperor's body was irreversible. For example, the injury on Wei Wei's forearm couldn't be healed. Unless one obtained the opportunity of the great Dao, like Li Wanji and Lin Feng, who forged the divine earth Dao body, the body wouldn't be damaged. Otherwise, once crippled, they would live forever until they ascended to the divine realm. This was the tragedy of the mortal world's martial artists. No matter how high their cultivation was and how strong their soul was, they still couldn't avoid the fatal weakness of the body. However, Wei Wei was now cultivating a divine palace emperor art passed down by Qin Hao. She could use the abstruse emperor Dao to form the missing forearm. Therefore, she looked the same as before. However, there would be consumption in the process, which would accelerate the burning of her lifespan. Although the emperor art made her whole, there would be drawbacks. This was the price she had to pay. It wasn't a big problem. As Qin Hao recovered his peak cultivation and got closer to the divine Dao, he believed that he could use the power of law to reverse the heavenly Dao and help Wei Wei regrow her limbs. Hu Qinxiu's face was full of shock. His panic was gradually replaced by shock. His fingers trembled as he reached forward. He couldn't believe what Qin Hao said. Only a few direct members of the family knew the reason why Patriarch, who was crippled. Hu Qinxiu heard from his father that the Patriarch had a dispute with Dendi. Now, Qin Hao said that he was the one who crippled the Patriarch's leg. This person was Dendi. How could Hu Qinxiu believe this? After all, 20 years ago, the battle tower had shaken the 5 realms with that single palm strike. Under that single palm strike, the Pill Emperor, his wife, and the Eastern Seas Empress Yue had all been reduced to ashes. They didn't die. How was this possible? Not only was Hu Qinxiu shocked out of his wits, Su Cheng, Li Lufeng, and Zhu Sheng all opened their eyes in disbelief. At this time, Yin Bao's body trembled violently. The vague memories that had been sealed in the depths of her heart when she was a child came back like a tide. The scenes replayed again and again, and the fragments became clearer and clearer. In the end, it stopped at the top of the sky stairway where Xiao Han and the Elixir Emperor combined their swords and attacked the battle tower at the same time. In the end, the two figures were covered by the grand destructive palm. Voila! The fragments in her mind shattered, and her soul seemed to have shattered along with them. A heavy blow suddenly appeared behind Bauer's head. At that time, she was knocked unconscious by Yun Rose Emperor Qi. But now, the same feeling swept over her again. It was as if she had experienced the scene of her life and death separation with Xiao Han in the God Burial Valley once again. She couldn't help but cover her face with her hands and cry bitterly. Since you like to show off, I will give you the same chance as Cripple Hu. Come, let this emperor experience the power of the immortal sex Dao formation. I believe that after a few hundred years, the Hu clan's Dao formation will be stronger in your hands than Cripple Hu's. Qin Hao spoke with a majestic battle intent. The majestic and flawless emperor intent suppressed Hu Qinxiu's head. As Bao Er's cries got louder, the pressure got stronger. Hu Qinxiu's face was filled with fear. He couldn't control his body and kept retreating. Fight with Dende? He must be tired of living. It might be possible that they were born in the same era, but it was just a possibility. Hu Qinxiu talked big, but when he faced Dende, he would have been crushed by Qin Hao's emperor aura. He didn't want to end up like his ancestor, crippled for the rest of his life. Make your move, Qin Hao said with a majestic voice. Where was the courage just now? Where was that arrogant aura? Did he think that he was no longer in this world? He dared to come to the 100 Spirits Islands to vent his anger on the little princess of the Daqin Empire. This immortal sect was really bold. Cripple who had forgotten the pain after the scar healed. He really didn't teach his grandson well. I am not Senior's match. I admit defeat. Hu Qinxiu's body was shaking like a sieve. What courage! He just wanted to close his eyes and return to the immortal sect in the next moment. He realized that coming here was a mistake. Admit defeat? Qin Hao's face was instantly filled with displeasure. The slightest change in his emotions caused the entire 100 Spirits Island peak to become extremely oppressive. He said in a low voice, "You haven't even fought yet, and you're already admitting defeat. You're being so perfunctory with me. Did Cripple Who teach you this?" Cripple Who, Cripple Who. Hu Qinxiu's eyes were filled with tears. Qin Hao's domineering aura had forced him into a corner. He was on the verge of crying as he kept repeating the words Cripple Who. It was as though he was going to be described as a reflection of himself. He didn't have any of the demeanor of a young master of an immortal sect. If you aren't going to make a move, then this emperor won't be courteous. Qin Hao slowly raised his palm. Traces of Dao flames glowed with a dark red light. It was as though they could penetrate the enemy's heart. The fresh blood that flowed on his hand was extremely impactful. "I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to make things difficult for Yun Bao. I just wanted to see her talent and the Emperor Dao law she controlled. I didn't really have any intentions." Hu Qinxiu's legs were trembling violently. His face was filled with tears of disappointment. Even if Qin Hao didn't appear, the Dao sword in the array wouldn't be able to pierce Bao Er's body. He was speaking the truth. "I see. All right, show me the immortal diagram, Dao array again. I didn't see it clearly just now. Show it again, and I will let you go back to the immortal sect." Qin Hao's expression calmed down. Hu Qinxiu looked at Su Chang with tears in his eyes. Seeing Su Chang nodding at him like a chick pecking at rice, Hu Qinxiu was instantly filled with humiliation. He finally regained his composure. A layer of Dao array, immortal light bloomed from his body. But at this moment, Qin Hao raised his palm and pointed. The red lotus tyrannical fire turned into a sharp ray of light that pierced into Hu Qinxiu's forehead. There was a loud bang. The emperor intent that could topple mountains and overturn seas entered his soul. Hu Qinxiu's body trembled violently. His limbs, bones, organs, and meridians all felt an extremely intense burning sensation at the same time. Waves of Dao fire flowed in his body, as though it wanted to burn through his flesh. The pain was indescribable. He couldn't help but let out a hoarse howl. "Show me the Dao array," Qin Hao said with a sullen expression. His tone was undeniable and fully displayed Dende's authority. "I can't release it." Hu Qinxiu was in so much pain that his entire body spasmed. He couldn't help but curl up in midair. If not for Qin Hao's emperor intent restraining him, he would have fallen straight down. Qin Hao looked expressionlessly at this Hu Jr. Logically, he shouldn't have treated Hu Qinxiu like this. But this guy took advantage of Bao Er's weakness, and his mood was affected by the situation in the Phoenix Flower sect. He wanted to see Bao Er's talent ability, completely ignoring Bao Er's feelings. All right, Qin Hao could only let Hu Qinxiu have a taste of his own medicine. "Senior, please be merciful. We were wrong. On account of the 100 Spirits Island Lord, please let Qinxiu go." Su Cheng looked at Hu Qinxiu, who was in so much pain. He couldn't bear to see Hu Qinxiu unable to use his talent. "Merciful. I was merciful enough. I even felt that it was too light." Qin Hao didn't budge. He always took lives directly. He had already considered Yun Ro's face by not killing Hu Qinxiu. "Please be merciful." At this moment, beams of Emperor light shot out from the Dao Peak's main hall. Instantly, loud whistling sounds could be heard. Island Lord Yun Ro, Sect Lord Su's wife, Hundred Spirits Island's upper echelons, and the immortal sect's Tao protectors all appeared and gathered here. Seeing Hu Qinxiu being suppressed by Qin Hao's emperor intent and rolling around in pain in the air, the immortal sect's experts couldn't help but change their expressions. Wang. Waves of emperor aura descended from the sky. Then, Shou Wuk, Xiao Han, and Mu Yue all appeared and blocked the immortal sect. They had followed Qin Hao here and witnessed everything that had happened. However, none of them tried to stop Qin Hao, especially Xiao Han, who stared at Hu Qinxiu with an especially cold expression. This brat from the Hu clan deserved it. You? Yinro was stunned when she saw Qin Hao. Sister Yinro, how have you been? Xiao Han retracted the coldness on his face and smiled. Han, are you too? When Xiao Han stood in front of Yinro, tears immediately gushed out of her eyes. What happened in the past had left her with great regret and had always been a knot in her heart. Now that she saw Xiao Han safe and sound, even the valiant Yunro couldn't help but shed tears. Let's stop here. He came to 100 Spirits and encountered such a thing. What a sin. A graceful and noble figure slowly descended from the sky as Feng Lan spoke faintly. Phoenix Flower Supremacy. The immortal sect and 100 Spirits emperors bowed at the same time. It's over. Su Cheng looked at the incomparably outstanding figures. This was the first time he saw such a scene in his life. He silently looked at Hu Qinxiu and felt sorry for the young master of the Hu clan. Hu Qinxiu was arrogant and had been thoroughly taught a lesson today. The war in the north is imminent. Why did supremacy come here? And this? Madame Su's attitude was humble. In front of Feng Lan, she was also a junior. Especially in front of Qin Hao, even Dinda's name was taboo. She didn't dare to speak directly. The war immortal guards have all retreated from the north. The 100 Spirits lineage can be relieved. Yinro, Yinxia, come over. Feng Lan looked at Qin Hao. Qin Hao took the lead and walked towards the main hall of the Dao Peak. Xiao Han hugged Baoer. This dreamlike warm hug made Yun Bao completely lose her composure. The bitterness and loneliness of many years turned into a river of tears that couldn't be stopped. Let's go, Mu Yue said. Xiao Han nodded. The two of them held Bao-er's hands and followed behind Dindi and Phoenix Flower Supremacy. Madame Su and Yunxia didn't dare to mention Hu Qinxiu. They hardened their hearts and left their son, Su Cheng, here. The Emperor Dao elders of the immortal sect didn't immediately follow. Instead, they carefully walked to Hu Qinxiu, who was rolling on the ground. They wanted to try and see if they could resolve it for him. After 6 hours, the flame power in his body will dissipate by itself. Of course, you can help if you want. If you use the Emperor's will and cause the flame power in his body to go berserk, then it will have nothing to do with me. Dinda's warning came from the void. Instantly, the elders who were about to move immediately retracted their hands. Their expressions were complicated. They expressed helplessness, sighs, and shook their heads to Hu Qinxiu. They followed the group into the hall. 6 hours was enough. This feeling, they couldn't help even if they wanted to. After everyone left, Su Cheng, who was guarding Hu Qinxiu alone, bent down and whispered in Hu Qinxiu's ear, "Be careful." Chapter 1903. Outside the hall, Hu Qinxiu's shouts didn't stop. At this moment, everyone in the hall turned a deaf ear to his shouts. Pairs of eyes were focused on Dindi. This East Continent sovereign's life was filled with legends. Everyone wanted to know how he dodged that palm strike from God Burial Valley. Facing everyone's gazes, Qin Hao briefly explained what happened at God Burial Valley. Back then, other than Yunro, Bai Ling, and a few other elders, most of the people present didn't participate in the opening of the God Burial Valley. He also didn't explain in detail. Qin Hao came here to reunite with Baoer. Secondly, he was here to plan for the East Continent's war. He looked at everyone and said, after the battle at Penglai, the Sky Shaker race was removed from the EC. Now, the Shuo race is in charge of the entire sea territory. In the north, the Setting Sun Peak has transferred all the battle god guards away. The danger is temporarily alleviated. In the south, the Tao ancestor is overseeing the Tao sect. From the situation, Qin Hao's side had the advantage. Furthermore, the reinforcements he had were far more than these. Zhan Wu has misgivings because of the 3 invitations. He doesn't know where I am. According to his temper, he won't act rashly. He should be quiet for a period of time. However, it won't be for long. I hope that everyone can raise their cultivations while defending their territories. Qin Hao said, before a great battle, time was extremely precious to everyone. He also didn't dare to guarantee that Zhan Wu was really waiting for him at the setting sun peak. Or maybe the setting sun battle god would suddenly use his overwhelming lineup to eliminate one of the 3 factions. Who could say for sure? Therefore, the necessary precautions must be taken. Many people's expressions changed. When they heard that the East Sea Sky Shaker race was destroyed, Yin Ro and Madame Su couldn't help but feel shocked. However, since it came from Denda's mouth, he wouldn't lie to them. As expected of the sovereign of a generation, this method, Madame Su sighed. An overlord force with thousands of years of foundation was destroyed just like that. If it was someone else, it wouldn't be so easy. However, Qin Hao said it as if it was just a casual matter. This was Dendi. 600 years later, he was still able to stir up a storm in the East Continent. In the world, only the current setting sun battle god had the same qualifications and strength. What do you plan to do? Yin Ro and asked if Dendi was defeated. If Dendi. Before I came here, I thought about setting up a large-scale teleportation formation on each of the 9 main islands of the Phoenix Flower sect, the Tao sect, and the Penglai sect. The power of the formation can withstand the Tao will of an emperor. This way, no matter where the war immortal guards suddenly descend, we can provide support at any time and avoid being defeated one by one. Qin Hao didn't have enough strength to directly attack Sunset Peak. He needed time to find more helpers. In the meantime, he was worried that Zhan Wu would attack. Tao sect, 9 Phoenix Flower branches, East Sea Shuo clan. These 3 major orthodoxies were the 3 important strongholds. However, it wasn't a small matter for the overlord forces to set up a formation that could support the teleportation of Emperor Tao experts. After all, if they didn't work together, they could use the formation to teleport from one place to another. This was a formation that could teleport Emperor Tao experts. It was basically unstoppable. Therefore, he needed to consult Feng Lan and the other 8 island masters. You should know that the moment Master Feng Qi helped Bauer, the fate of the 9 Phoenix Flower branches was already tied to Dendi. No matter what you do, I'll support you. Feng Lan's attitude was very frank. She couldn't reject Qin Hao's decision. She could only do her best to support it. The 9 Phoenix Flower branches were all female disciples. Usually, she wouldn't agree to the teleportation formation. However, things are different now. Since Master Ji Zun agrees, the 100 Spirit branch will cooperate. Yin Ro didn't have any objections. Very well. I'll inform the Tao ancestor later. He'll set up the formation himself to connect the south, north, and East Sea. Qin Hao said. The formation that could support Emperor Tao experts was no joke. Moreover, the time to set it up was very limited. It had to be done by someone who was good at it and had a strong enough cultivation. As for the others, Qin Hao looked at Madame Su. I heard that Madame Su's husband has reached the peak of enlightenment. The immortal sect is involved in the North Territory dispute because of me. If Dindon needs it, I'll inform my husband and let him work with the Tao ancestor to set up the formation. Madame Su understood Qin Hao's meaning. Thank you. Also, set up one for the immortal sect. Qin Hao chuckled. This. Madame Su looked at the Emperor Tao elders of the immortal sect. They looked very cautious and shook their heads slightly. Madame Su replied, I need to discuss it with my husband and let him ask the other 2 sect leaders for their opinions, as well as ancestor who's. I can't make this decision. It was one thing for the immortal sect to help Feng Hua, but it was another thing to ally with Qin Hao. The latter was much more serious than the former. It doesn't matter. I'm setting up a formation for your own good. You can tell Cripple Hu that if I lose this battle, Zhan Wu will never let him go. But if I win, I'll fix him back in the same way that I crippled him back then. Qin Hao promised. Madame Su was born in the 100 Spirit Island. Helping Fenghua was her duty as a disciple. If she gave up a formation for the immortal sect, she would undoubtedly be on the same side as Qin Hao. However, since the immortal sect had done it, even if they only helped Fenghua and didn't participate in the feud between Qin Hao and the Sunset Battle Immortal, would Zhang Wu forgive them after the matter? It was impossible. Yin Xia, Bai Ling is a burden to you, Yin Ro said. Yin Xia shook her head. Senior sister, don't say that. All right, I'll report your thoughts to my husband. As for whether patriarch who dares to do it, I can't guarantee it. He definitely dares to do it for his leg. Qin Hao laughed a few times. He believed that cripple who would make the wisest choice. When the elders of the immortal sect heard Qin Hao's laughter, they all smiled apologetically. Although their smiles were very unnatural, they understood that Dindi was the only person in the world who could heal Patriarch Hu's leg. If Dindi couldn't do it, there would be no one else in the divine wilderness. What are your chances of winning this battle? Feng Lan asked. As of now, I have no chance of winning. Qin Hao replied. In terms of peak battle strength, the Tao ancestor, Wuk, and Qin Hao were all in the unblemished realm. Even if Feng Lan, who was holding the Dream Branch, was a fake unblemished realm expert, they still had a slim chance of winning against the Sunset Peak. The strength of the three from the Battle Tower couldn't be underestimated. Besides, there was the Divine Martial Hall on the Sunset Peak. It was said that there were 4 powerful figures at the level of cold distribution in the Divine Martial Hall. In this way, excluding Zhang Wu, the Sunset Peak had 7 unblemished Great Emperors. Qin Hao's side was less than half of the unblemished Great Emperors. It was very dangerous. Zhuiying, Great Emperor of the Zhuiying Sword Palace in the Middle World, had the power to pass the unblemished Great Realm 20 years ago. I believe that 20 years later, he will be in the unblemished Great Realm. At this time, Shouwuk said to Qin Hao, I will find him. He will come. The 5th unblemished Great Emperor. I heard that you have a good relationship with Prince Chun of the Warring States in the Western world. If the Kim people join the battle, they will be a force to be reckoned with. Madame Su said. Jin Chun, well, he is a good person. Unfortunately, the others in the Warring States may not have the courage to join the battle. Qin Hao knew Jin Chun well. If he asked, the other party would definitely come. Of course, it would only be Jin Chun alone. Just like the Immortal Sect, Madame Su helped Fenghua, but the 3 clans of the Immortal Sect might not help Qin Hao. The consequences of the battle with the Sunset Peak were too serious. The Kim people of the Warring States might not dare to come. In contrast, it was more likely to ask Cripple Hu for help. In fact, I have a partner who is stronger than the Kim people. It's the Phoenix Gods. Qin Hao thought of Emperor Jingji. In the Burial God relic, it could be seen that the relationship between the Phoenix Gods and the Sunset Peak was not good. Zhang Wu was too strong. A tall tree attracts the wind, just like Qin Hao. If Qin Hao visited the Phoenix Patriarch in person, he might be able to invite this expert. Of course, the chances were slim. Moreover, it was impossible for him to rely on his relationship with Senior Sister Miao Li. If Senior Sister Miao Li was still around, it would be fine, but now that Senior Sister Miao Li was gone, how could the Phoenix God raise hand over the lives of their clansmen to Qin Hao just because of this relationship? Although the chances were slim, he could still fight for it. Lu Gui and Ni Xiong once said that the only person in the divine wilderness who could withstand an arrow from the war god was the Phoenix Patriarch. It could be seen that the Phoenix Patriarch's cultivation was amazing. He should be stronger than a Tao ancestor, perhaps on the same level as a Tao ancestor at his peak. If we have the help of the Phoenix Clan Elder, the gap between us and the Sunset Peak will be greatly reduced. What I am worried about is Han Lingxian. If she interferes, Feng Lan did not continue speaking. Even if she did not say it, everyone knew what the situation would be like. With Da Qin and the Sunset Peak, Qin Hao's strength was not enough unless the emperors and lords of the 5 realms worked together. Even if he invited the Phoenix Patriarch, they would not win the battle. Indeed, it is time. Qin Hao stood up from his seat and let out a long sigh. Yin Ro, Madame Su, and everyone else was stunned. It is time? When? It was puzzling. Qin Hao smiled secretly. It was time to gather the 300 disciples of the Divine Palace. Although he had lost the life slip left by his senior sister and could not accurately find everyone based on the sovereign spirit, he believed that under the call of the 7 peaks, there would definitely be people who would come. He did not expect any of the patriarchs of his sect to reach the unblemished realm. After all, it would be difficult not to be recognized in the 4 regions after reaching this realm. They only needed a little help. 300 people. If each sect provided one sovereign, it would be 300. It would be a shocking scene. You can make the decision. I will go back to the Windflower ancestral land to inform the other 7 main islands to prepare the array. Fenlon stood up and said. The sovereign light on her body flowed, and she disappeared. I will also return to the celestial gate and pass your words to my husband. The final decision will be made by the 3 sect masters. Madame Su bowed and left the hall accompanied by the elders of the celestial gate. I'm not feeling well. I will leave first. Yin Bao, glanced at Xiaohan. She seemed to have something to say, but was too embarrassed to speak. She turned and left alone. It has been 20 years. Sister Yin Ro Bao I have troubled you. Xiaohan held Yin Ro's hand tightly. The two looked at each other and smiled, just like before. What are you waiting for? Mu Yue gave Qin Hao a look. Xiaohan deliberately did not respond to Bao. To create an opportunity for Qin Hao. As a father, what was he waiting for? Chapter 1904. Bao had no father to accompany her since she was born. Her father had always been absent in her childhood, adolescence, and rebellious period. This had not only become a knot in Bao heart, but also a great regret for Qin Hao. She was lonely, wronged, and helpless. When she needed care and comfort the most, Qin Hao was not by her side. Now, her father had appeared out of nowhere. It was not just a few words that could bring them closer. I'll go see her, Qin Hao said to Xiaohan, his tone faintly nervous. Go, Xiaohan said gently. She believed that Qin Hao could do it. I'll go back to the Sword Palace. Wuk said. Qin Hao nodded. Remember to say hello to the Sword Emperor for me. They wanted to attack the Sunset Peak and rescue Vivian's father, Xing and Yao Lao. The Zhuiying Sword Emperor will be a powerful helper. With Wuk there, this matter could be done. The two walked out of the hall together. Wuk transformed into Sword Will and pierced through the void to leave. Qin Hao silently followed behind Bao. They did not get too close. There was always some distance between them to avoid pressuring Bao. In this palace corridor, the father and daughter walked at the same time, without speaking. Bao stopped, so did Qin Hao. Bao started walking, and Qin Hao immediately continued to follow. The scene was very quiet. At this moment, Qin Hao was like a loyal guard following behind Princess. The two maintained a silent, tacit understanding. Bao looked back. What did he mean by following her? She had wanted to talk to her mother about her worries and regain the feelings they had when they were young. However, this man had strangely followed her without saying a word. Suddenly, the Emperor's light flowed on Bao's body. She took a step and turned into a light shadow that swept across the sky from a main peak. The honest uncle said that when she was in a bad mood, she should not trap herself in a small room. She should go to an open place to empty herself. Therefore, she was not going to return to her room. Qin Hao raised his head and looked at Bao's back. Then he took a step forward. Water Wind God increased its speed slightly and followed her like a shadow. It was just like the scene in the corridor just now. Bao frowned. Was there no end to this? A layer of flower light appeared around her body and surrounded her. Under the flower fairy art, countless flower petals fell from the sky. Bao was bathed in them, and her speed in the air became faster and faster. She was like a beam of light, and in the blink of an eye, she crossed the boundless space and left the 100 spirit islands. Qin Hao used a fleet-foot stride and walked freely in the void. He was as graceful as an immortal. He could keep up with Bao's speed without any effort. Watching his daughter use the emperor technique of the phoenix flower lineage, he nodded inwardly. His ability wasn't bad. For Bao to be able to use the phoenix flower fairy art so exquisitely, she must have put in a lot of effort in private. However, it couldn't be compared to his water-wind god stride. Qin Hao could feel that the essence of the phoenix flower fairy art was more about illusions. When this art was used, it would lower the intensity of one's aura and allow the martial artist to integrate with the great Tao of space. It would make it difficult for the enemy to capture one's figure from one's aura. Even if he didn't look at the martial technique in the art, he knew that it would be unpredictable footwork. This was his water-wind god stride's entry-level technique. After advancing to the next level, when he cultivated the water-wind flash or above, the power of the fleet-foot stride would increase by leaps and bounds. When he moved, he would be as silent as water and as fast as the wind. It would have more killing power in actual combat and would push the martial artist's speed to the limit. Therefore, compared to the fleet-foot stride, the flower fairy art was a little gaudy. Of course, Qin Hao didn't have the intention to compete with Bao. He was just thinking that he should let Bao cultivate a more exquisite movement martial technique and inherit his father's legacy. Two figures flew across the vast island, one in front and one behind. The gorgeous emperor's shadow and the emperor's aura shocked the people below. Soon, the father and daughter entered the North Sea. Bao stood on a huge reef. She placed her hands in front of her and let out a carefree cry at the endless sea. Following her cry, the sea water rolled and a huge creature jumped out from the bottom of the sea. It leaped for thousands of feet, its whole body shining with green light. Under the sunlight, its huge mouth, which looked like a dragon's head, let out a deep roar. The oppressive aura was extremely strong. The ancient dragon whale appeared. Its huge body swayed in front of Bao, stirring up huge waves. In the past, it would carry Bao deeper into the sea. But today, it didn't get close. The dragon whale wandered in front of Bao. Its huge eyes stared at the other figure on the reef. It felt a very dangerous aura from this human. Judging from his situation, he seemed to be an elder. He didn't show any threat to Bao. The dragon whale couldn't figure out the relationship between the two. The best choice was to wait and see. Ancient dragon whale. Qin Hao was slightly surprised. The North Sea actually had a descendant of the dragon race. How rare. Since the Xinyuan royal family in the southern region was destroyed, the 8-winged black dragon was the only true dragon that Qin Hao had seen. He thought it was the only one left in the world. He didn't expect there to be a dragon in the North Sea. A long time ago, my mother and I went to the God-burying island. We met Uncle Dragon on the way. After a few days, Yinro finally made it submit and become my pet. Bao recalled the past and smiled sweetly. Uncle Dragon? Qin Hao's mouth twitched. Very good. An emperor-level pet and a powerful sea dragon. It was a natural ruler of the sea. Not bad. Why are you following me? Bao turned and looked at Qin Hao. They looked at each other seriously for the first time. Bao was already an adult. She was now slender and elegant, and was of marriageable age. Although Qin Hao had a head full of silver hair, his appearance was still handsome. Both of them had extraordinary temperaments, so from the scene, it was very difficult for outsiders to think that they were father and daughter. They were more like brother and sister, or perhaps lovers. Qin Hao didn't answer. Why was he following her? Did he need a reason? No, he didn't. I was born in the Phoenix Flower Country and grew up in the 9 bloodlines. The North Sea is my home. After more than 20 years, my feelings for my mother are very faint. I don't have any feelings for my father at all, Bao said. Bao said, in her world, there had never been a father. I'm very sorry. Qin Hao lowered his head slightly. He was tired of running around all his life. When it came to his daughter, he didn't fulfill his responsibility. So, I don't need a father. Do you understand? Bao's eyes were misty. Perhaps it was a little hurtful to say this, but she really didn't have any feelings for Qin Hao. She couldn't act like a spoiled child in front of a father who appeared out of thin air. I don't need a father, Qin Hao whispered. He felt a stab of pain in his heart. Then he smiled. A ball of divine light appeared in his hand. He extended it forward and handed it to Bao. For you. Bao looked over. In Qin Hao's hand was a folding fan, but it was no ordinary item. It emitted a vast power. When it appeared, it was as if the North Sea had come alive. Bao could faintly hear countless fairies singing. All the spiritual qi in the world became incomparably lively and began to gather here. Dream Branch. Phoenix Flower Prime carried a divine weapon, and those who held the Dream Branch were invincible in the North Territory. Bao's eyes were filled with shock. She had participated in the 9 lineages fallen martial competition in order to seize the Dream Branch and become the next Phoenix Flower Goddess. Now, Phoenix Flower Prime's divine soldier was actually in his hands. A gift, she said. Bao revealed a faint cold smile. Then it was really generous. He could take Phoenix Flower Prime's divine soldier as he wished and give it away as he wished. Bao couldn't help but think of another face, the Battle Tower. The Battle God Temple seemed to have the same style of doing things. If they wanted something, they would take it for themselves. No one in the 5 realms dared to disobey. Now, what was the difference between Dendi and the Sunset Battle God? But she was no longer the naive little girl who didn't know much about the world. Did he think that a mere gift could make her happy? Even if it wasn't a candy or a bouquet of flowers, but the strongest divine soldier in the North Territory, she still wouldn't accept it. It's not a gift. You deserve it. Phoenix Mist entrusted me to give it to you. If you want to become the goddess, after the North Territory stabilizes, we can hold the coronation ceremony at any time. At that time, I will invite the 5 realms' emperors to attend the ceremony. Qin Hao's tone was a little humble. No need. Bao flatly refused. Phoenix Flower Prime sincerely entrusted it to her, or was she threatened by Dendi? Bao participated in the 9 channels martial competition to prove herself to Yunro. She wasn't a useless person in the eyes of Island Lord Yunro. Now that Xiaohan had returned, his mother was still the best. Hence, it didn't matter whether she had Dream Branch or not. She didn't lack anything. She just wanted a family member. That way, she wouldn't feel lonely in this world. Prime promised to support you in taking back the Sunset Peak. The Dream Branch can be used more in her hands. If you want to win against the Sunset Battle God, you better return the Dream Branch to her. Bao coldly said, I didn't fight against the Sunset Battle God to take back the Sunset Peak or for fame. There are many things you don't understand. Qin Hao hurriedly explained. If he didn't attack, he wouldn't be able to survive. Western Liang, Northern Territory, and the Southern Territory, including the Phoenix Flower 9 channels, would disappear from this world along with Dendi. That included Bao. I don't want to hear it. Leave. Bao turned her back to Qin Hao and said. Qin Hao wanted to say something, but stopped. He lowered his head and said, I didn't participate in your growth. When you needed a father, I wasn't by your side. This is a regret I can never make up for. Dream Branch was indeed entrusted to me by Feng Lan. You won the chief disciple of the 9 channels martial competition, so it's only right. Bao, I'm not a competent father. Perhaps I won't be a good father in the future, but I have to let you understand that from the moment you and your mother appeared before me, I made a decision. I can give up everything for my daughter without hesitation and spare no effort, including this life of mine. To me, you are my entire world. Qin didn't know how to be a good father. He didn't have any experience, but his words were true. Silently taking back the Dream Branch, Qin Hao saw that Bao was still indifferent, as if there was an unrelated person behind her. Qin Hao took a deep breath and continued. In the Dao formation, you didn't fight back against Uqianxiu because you were resisting the power of your bloodline. Bao, you have to know that everything in the world exists for a reason. Power isn't divided into good and evil. Good and evil are people. It's like your other talents and is also a part of you. I hope, next time, don't stand there stupidly and let others hit you. My heart will ache. After saying these words, Qin Hao turned and flew away. No matter how cold Bao was, he wouldn't give up. As he said, the moment he knew that his daughter was born, he was prepared to give up everything. He would work hard to learn how to be a good father. So, you've always been by my side. Feeling Qin Hao leave, Bao's tear-filled face blossomed into a sunny smile. She remembered Qin Hao's voice. It had appeared in her dreams more than once. It was especially clear on the day of the 9 Channels martial competition. Chapter 1905. His daughter couldn't accept a strange father after being absent for decades. Although Qin Hao was a little disappointed that Bao refused to accept the Mengji, he wouldn't force her. He could wait. In the future, he would have a lot of time to accompany his daughter and protect her silently. In fact, Bao Er's refusal to accept the Mengji seemed to have a deeper meaning. She was right. In the current situation, the Mengji's power in Fenglan's hands was far greater than that of Denda's daughter. In order to attack Sunset Peak, it was more effective to use a powerful magic weapon on a suitable person. No matter what Bao Er's motive was, whether it was for the 9 veins of the phoenix flower or for Qin Hao, his daughter's way of doing things was very considerate. She wasn't as cold as she seemed. After talking with Fenglan and Yunro, Qin Hao immediately sent a message to the Taoist ancestor. He started to set up the teleportation formations of the 3 major orthodoxies. The Taoist ancestor, Bo Changji, would do it personally. With the north border as the center, the 9 islands, the southern border Tao sect, and the Shuo clan of the EC would build more than 20 formations capable of carrying Emperor Tao experts. The 3 sides would act as each other's horns and could support each other at any time. Madame Su brought Qin Hao's message back to the Immortal Sect. The only ancestor left in the Immortal Sect, Lame Hu, didn't give Dendi a clear answer. Starting a war with Sunset Peak would involve too much. Once they agreed, there would be no way out. Either one side would die or the other would die. As the ancestor of the Immortal Sect, Lame Hu had to be extra careful. However, he sent 3 strong helpers to assist Bo Changji in building the teleportation formation. This time, not only did Madame Su's husband come, but Hu Qinqiu's father and the head of the Quan clan also came. The Immortal Sect was originally good at formations in the west border. Many of their methods were similar to the Taoist sect, which saved the Taoist ancestor a lot of effort. From this point of view, one could see Lame Hu's attitude. Except for himself, the 3 sect masters in charge of the Immortal Sect came together to convey the Immortal Sect's intention to Dendi. However, except for the 3 sect masters, there wasn't a single soldier. Even the Taoist experts who were assigned to Madame Su were ordered back by Lame Hu's order. Qin Hao understood what Cripple Hu meant. Cripple Hu was planning to observe the situation and hadn't made up his mind. Qin Hao wasn't in a hurry. He believed that when the Zhuiying Sword Emperor and the Phoenix Clan ancestor appeared in the North region, Cripple Hu would definitely come uninvited. 10 days later, the teleportation portals in the 3 orthodoxies were completed. Sect leader Hu, sect leader Su, and sect leader Quan didn't leave. At this moment, on the 100 Spirits Island, a circle of dazzling light appeared above the dojo, and an yin-yang diagram with Boundless Emperor will slowly fell into it. Immediately, it stirred up endless rays of light, and a mysterious and unfathomable Tao might surge from it. Outside the Tao sanctum, Qin Hao, the Tao ancestor, the 3 immortal sect masters, Paragon Phoenix Flower, Yunro, and many island lords were there. They looked at the huge Tao array that was circulating with yin-yang radiance on the Tao sanctum with solemn expressions. This array was combined with the Tao ancestors' power of reversing yin and yang, as well as the immortal sect celestial art. It was also integrated with the will of Qin Hao Wuk, Fenglan, and many other unblemished cultivators. Back in the Divine Palace, the 7 Peak Venerables, led by great ancestor Yun Yi, worked together to activate a supreme illusion array. This array could derive the power of heaven and earth and form a universe of its own. When the disciples of the Divine Palace entered the array, they could open a strange door of martial arts according to the will of the way contained in the array. They could walk in and train themselves. It was both real and illusory, with thousands of changes. With the cultivation of Qin Hao and the others, they naturally couldn't compare with the 7 Peak Venerables of the Divine Palace. Although they were only bodies of obsession, their nirvana-level power still hadn't dissipated. Qin Hao, The Tao ancestor, Wu Kei, and Feng Lan were unable to achieve the strength of the formation energy of the other party, and it was impossible for them to create the spirit of the formation. Even so, the people who entered the formation could still improve their individual strength through the tempering of Tao insights. Strength was exactly what was needed at the moment. Xiao Han, Yunro, and Wei Wei. Holy Emperor Jiang, Ancestor Li, and Great Ancestor Wanhai. These were all extremely powerful cultivators who had proven their way. Among them, Wei Wei, Ancestor Li, and Great Ancestor Wanhai were very close to the unblemished realm. Through the experience of the unblemished will of the Wei in the array, they might be able to break through. Many people could go in and train. Even the descendants of Bao Hu Qinxiu, and Su Cheng could enter. A few days ago, news came from Xianlong Mountain. For some unknown reason, Zhuge Xiu, the commander of Sunset Peak and one of the most powerful divine generals under the command of the Sunset War God, was seriously injured. Feng Lan's gaze fell on the array, and the will of the emperor was absorbed into it. She continued, the Xianlong lineage was slaughtered by Meng Xiang, and their orthodoxy was destroyed. The Xianlong emperor escaped with injuries and fled to the Daqin Empire to seek refuge. Now, he was recruited by Han Lingxian and was given the position of imperial advisor. This happened very suddenly. Zhuge Xiu, an unblemished emperor, fought with the Xianlong emperor for no reason. The Xianlong holy man's cultivation was also very shocking, and he was evenly matched with Zhuge Xiu. After Meng Xiang appeared, he was able to escape from the two of them. If it didn't happen in real life, no one would have believed it. The waters in the East Continent were too deep. Feng Lan couldn't understand why Zhuge Xiu would appear in Xianlong Mountain. Xianlong Mountain was located in an extremely remote island in the North Territory. It wasn't prosperous, and the Xianlong holy man wasn't very famous. He was just an ordinary emperor. But in the end, this person's cultivation was so strong. Qin Hao's gaze moved, and he pondered for a moment. He also couldn't figure out the reason. What secrets were hidden in Xianlong Mountain? With Zhan Wu's personality, unless he was in mortal danger, he wouldn't care about the East Continent at all. Even when the Tao ancestor woke up from his deep slumber and used the power of his talent to move the stars and reach the Sunset Peak with a single thought, judging from Zhan Wu's performance at that time, he was still unperturbed. At most, he only sent the war tower to lead the troops to the south. But now, the sunset battle god sent Zhuge Xiu to Xianlong Mountain. It was clear that Zhan Wu's attitude was very sharp, and he seemed to be prepared to kill everyone. Unfortunately, he still underestimated the power of the Xianlong holy man. Elder, what do you think? Qin Hao spoke to the holy ancestor. Bo Changji's brows furrowed, and a trace of doubt appeared on his face. He shook his head and said, "Heavens will cannot be revealed. When the time comes, you will understand." Okay. Qin Hao was speechless and didn't pursue the matter. The holy ancestor had to pay a huge price every time he peeked into heaven's will. His furrowed brows just now probably meant that the price was too high and beyond what he could bear. No matter what the reason is, it seems to be good news for us. Feng Lan said. With Zhuge Xiu severely injured, the Sunset Peak basically lost one of its 3 great commanders. When attacking the Sunset Peak, the pressure would be reduced. Is indeed good news. Qin Hao nodded. Zhuge Xiu's power was the weakest among the 3 great commanders. If they really fought, 2 Zhuge Xius might not be able to defeat 1 Kuei Han. But after all, he was an unblemished martial saint. Now that he was severely injured, it would be impossible for him to recover in less than 100 years. Zhan Wu couldn't help him. On the other hand, it was the Xianlong holy man. What secrets or treasures did he have that caused Zhan Wu to be wary? The Xianlong holy man fled to Daqin to seek protection from Han Lingxian. From this, it seems that her relationship with the sunset battle god isn't as good as the rumors say. At this moment, sect leader Su of the Celestial Sect said, in the battle of the Xianlong Dao Mountain, Zhuge Xiu's injury was indeed beneficial to Qin Hao. But from the current situation, things weren't that simple. Everyone also understood that Empress Ling Xuan's protection of the person the Sunset Battle God wanted to kill would undoubtedly cause a rift between the Sunset Peak and Daqin. This made them feel more secure. If they fought with the war God Temple and Daqin didn't provide reinforcements, then the chances of victory would undoubtedly increase. The Xianlong holy man is hiding an extremely important secret. We have to be careful. Qin Hao thought. Of course, he didn't want to let the Xianlong holy man go, but he wanted to guard against Qingji Han. He didn't care much before, but after hearing sect leader Su's words, Qin Hao started to worry. No matter what they do, it's best that Han Lingxian and the War God Temple fight before we set off. Now that the formation is completed, let's go in and train. Li Xiuxing said. In the battle with ancestor Yun Tian, Li Xiuxing had suffered heavy injuries and had yet to fully recover. However, Qin Hao had healed most of his Dao bones and inner palace injuries. Only the layer of cloud energy that remained in his body needed to be removed by Li Xiuxing himself. Qin Hao could only help up to this point. If he forcefully removed it, it would definitely affect Li Xiuxing to a certain extent. I'll go in and try. Shouwuk said. Sword will circled around his body and turned into a ray of golden sword radiance that soared into the sky. It pierced into the light of the formation and followed the flow of the huge yin-yang diagram. Very soon, everyone on the training ground could no longer feel the aura of the true polarity swordmaster. Buzz, buzz, buzz. On the 100 Spirits training ground, as Shouwuk entered the formation, the light of the formation started to become restless. Faintly, everyone could hear the sound of swords clashing. The sound was coming from the formation. The formation contained the Dao ancestors' power of reversing yin and yang, Qin Hao's talent of 3 souls, and he had secretly injected a wisp of divine path nomological will into it. Fenglan had also used the Dream Branch to infuse the North Territory's power and her own Emperor's techniques. This included Wuk's all forms of sword will, which was the combination of the strengths of 4 unblemished great emperors. Qin Hao had learned formation techniques at the Divine Palace's Yun-Yi Peak and had seen the structure and principle of this formation. The Dao ancestor and sect leader Su were also very good at this technique. They communicated with each other and quickly created the formation orb. Therefore, even though the true polarity sword master had entered personally, he still faced a lot of pressure. At this time, the formation light in front of everyone's eyes was rippling more and more violently, and the sound of swords in their ears was also becoming clearer and more urgent. Soon, as a sharp beam of light pierced through the formation light, Shouwuk returned to everyone's side. His clothes were badly damaged, and there were several sword wounds on his face. There were also traces of burns on his wounds. Shouwuk's expression was very ugly, and there seemed to be a faint look of shock in his eyes. After a long time, he calmed down and looked at Saint Emperor Jiang and the others, saying, "The foundation of the formation is solid, and the power of the formation is stable. There won't be any chaotic explosions. You can experience it for yourselves, but there's one thing I need to remind you. Don't be too confident. Otherwise, you may not be able to come out." This, everyone looked at each other. They may not be able to come out? Did that mean that they would have to stay in the formation forever? In layman's terms, it means that they will die. It's wonderful, Shouwuk said, and then patted Qin Hao on the shoulder and secretly said, "You're ruthless." Chapter 1906. There was no spirit inside the formation, but leader Wu Kei saw many strange scenes inside. This formation could change according to the cultivator's state of mind. Maybe it was because the incident in Sword City back then had left a deep impression on him, but he was actually reliving the old scenes and revisiting them. The ruins of the ancient city, the broken buildings, and the broken swords everywhere. When the scene appeared again, it was as if it was real. Shouwuk found himself in Sword City. In an instant, countless Emperor Sword wills attacked him. Platinum sword shadows flew and intersected. The attacks were like rainbows and extremely fierce. Among them, some of the sword wills contained the yin-yang will of the Great Elder. Some of the sword chi formed a matrix and condensed into a powerful sword matrix of the Celestial Gate. Even Sho Wuck's sword will of all things appeared. These sword wills would become stronger and stronger as the warrior resisted. He could even feel the power of heaven and earth from them. It was the terrain of the north that Fonlan had poured into the matrix with the Dream Branch. And none of this was a problem for Sho Wuck. He had reached the unblemished plane and had already surpassed himself. He faced the storm of swords calmly and calmly. Only the sword wills of the Flames of the Way in Sword City gave Sword Master Jinji a lot of trouble. Even someone as strong as Sho Wuck's power of rules could not destroy the sword wills of the Flames. Through the collision of the wills of the Way, he found that the sword wills of the Flames of the sword wills were filled with supreme power. Ordinary rules and wills of the Way could not destroy it. It seemed to be a power of a higher level than the Way of the Emperor. Sho Wuck knew that this was the will of the Way that Qin Hao had poured into the Matrix. Moreover, it was very likely that it had been poured in through a divine item. There was only one word to describe it: ruthless. If even he could not destroy the will of the Way, one could imagine what would happen to Holy Emperor Jiang, Li Xiuxing, and the others if they encountered it. If they were careless, they could really lose their lives. Moreover, there were also Bao Er, Hu Qinxiu, Su Cheng, and the outstanding disciples of the 9 branches of the Phoenix Flower sect. Qin Hao could really do it. It can't be. Holy Emperor Jiang looked at the sword wounds on Sho Wuck's face. He knew what Sword Master Jinji was capable of, but he was still injured. He began to consider whether he should enter the formation and give it a try. Don't be scared by Wuck. I don't know what the array looks like at the moment, but its operation is always under the control of the Tao Ancestor and I. If there are any accidents or changes, we can pull you out at any time. Don't be nervous. Qin Hao said. Tempering was tempering. Naturally, he could not play with people to death or cripple them. Try your best. Don't give up until you can't hold on any longer. The Tao Ancestor advised everyone. After all, every obstacle was extremely precious for a martial artist to break through. Normally, Li Xiuxing, Ancestor treading sea, and the others would not encounter it. All right, Patriarchally nodded. He glanced at the huge formation light covering the entire dojo, then stepped into it and disappeared from everyone's sight. I can't let old man Li look down on me. Holy Emperor Jiang also entered the formation. Let's go. Mu Yue grabbed Xiao Han's hand and followed along with Yunro. You guys just need to supervise. I'll go in and experience it as well. Fenglan said solemnly. As the flower light lingered around her body, she also stepped into the formation light. Fenglan's situation was the same as grandmother Fengqi's. She had already touched the unblemished will, but could not completely transform. Only with the power of Mengji could she display the strength of the Way comparable to the true unblemished will in the North Territory. Now that she had the opportunity to improve her cultivation, she naturally did not want to miss it. Patriarchally, Holy Emperor Jiang, Ancestor treading sea, Wei Wei, Xiao Han, Yunro, and Phoenix Flower Sovereign, the first batch to enter the formation. Everyone outside the formation looked at the formation light floating, and they were all nervous and eager to make a move. The formation can still accommodate some people. Clan Master Su and the others don't want to go in and try. Qin Hao's mind sensed the fluctuation of the formation power. The formation of 4 unblemished great emperors was naturally not comparable to the 7 nirvanas of the Divine Palace, so it could only accommodate a limited number of people. Li Xiuxing and the others also had relatively high cultivation. About 10 more true selves would basically reach the limit of the formation power. Phoenix Flower Island Lords, please go first, Clan Master Su said with a smile. Clan leader Su explained with a smile. They had come from the Celestial Gate of the Western world to help assemble the Matrix. As guests, it was not good for them to steal the limelight. Even though they wanted to go in, they had to first see what the Phoenix Flower Island Lords thought. 10 days is the limit. We will take turns to train in the formation. None of you will be missing. It doesn't matter who goes in first. Qin Hao set the rules and nodded to Clan Master Su. Very well, we will enter the formation first. The three clan masters of the Celestial Gate looked at each other and turned into three rays of light that disappeared into the formation. Suddenly, the formation light in the training hall became even more dazzling. Senior, I'll have to trouble you here. I will send a message to Peng Lai and let more people improve themselves, including Shi Dong and Qingqing. Qin Hao said softly. He had already told Zhang Guang he'd let the clansmen who stayed in western Liang and northern borderline to gather in the North Territory. Qin Dingtian, Tang Rong, Xiao Yi, Duan Zhanfei, Yilan Yuan, and Su Jin, who was cultivating in the Medicine Valley. Xiaogua and Yishuehan were currently in Peng Lai and would come with the Shuo clan. This time, Qin Hao was going to cut off all means of retreat and fight with his back against the wall. You can go. Bo Changji took out an item from his sleeve and handed it to Qin Hao. He said, East Territory, within the Devil Luo Empire. The divine Wutong tree will sense it and guide you to the Phoenix God Clan. He had divined yesterday that the Phoenix God Clan's habitat was hidden in the East Territory. As long as Qin Hao was careful to avoid the elites of the Daqin Empire, there would be no accidents along the way. Okay, Qin Hao put away the divine Wudong tree. Do you want me to go with you? Shouwuk asked. Qin Hao crossing Daqin alone was not a small matter. No need. You should go back to the Sword Palace first. That is the most suitable place for you to practice your sword. The day I return will be the day I set foot on the Sunset Peak. Qin Hao patted Wuk's shoulder. Wuk's guess was right. The Zhuiying Sword Emperor had successfully passed the tribulation and became a flawless Sword Emperor. This time, Qin Hao was looking for the Phoenix God Clan and invited the Phoenix Patriarch. Once Zhang Wuk and the others broke through, even if one of them successfully broke through, 7 flawless Sword Emperors would be enough to fight with the War God Temple head-on. Thinking of this, Qin Hao was slightly excited. 600 years ago, his emperor body was destroyed in the God Burial Valley. He had been waiting for this day for too long. The truth of what happened back then was finally revealed. It depended on Zhang Wu's attitude and whether he would choose to announce it frankly or fight to the death. Pulling up the hood of his black robe, Qin Hao silently glanced at Bao Er. He wanted to say a few words, but he found that he was too powerless in front of his daughter. He took a step forward and directly broke through the air. He would come back and never let his daughter be alone again. Actually, he is quite concerned about you. Outside the training hall, Zhu Sheng whispered in Bao Er's ear. When Qin Hao left, his gaze was full of fatherly love and faint helplessness, which made one's heart ache. Bao Er pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Wasn't that guy very afraid of outsiders? Wasn't he incomparably strict? Why didn't he dare to come over and rub her head boldly? Girl, do you want to follow me to the Sword Palace to practice swordsmanship? Wuk shouted in this direction. Immediately, many disciples of the Phoenix Flower sect looked over with admiration and envy. Practicing swordsmanship with a flawless Sword Emperor was comparable to practicing with Phoenix Flower supremacy. This opportunity was something that could be obtained easily. However, the disciples of the Phoenix Flower sect also understood that with their background, they couldn't enjoy the same treatment as Bao Er. After all, she was the little princess of the 9 lineages. No need. This girl's talent isn't in swordsmanship. She should cultivate with me. The Tao ancestors said. Countless disciples of the Phoenix Flower sect were stunned on the spot, including Hu Qinxiu and Su Cheng, another flawless sword emperor, and he was the Tao ancestor of the South who had been famous for a long time. His qualifications were comparable to grandmother Feng Qi. Do you know what I want to do now? A disciple of the Phoenix Flower sect said to the person beside him with a sullen face. What do you think? The person beside him asked. I want to exchange bodies with Senior Bao Er and replace her. Go back and dream on. Ha! Many disciples laughed. Shouwuk also shook his head and smiled. He bowed slightly to the Tao ancestor. Sorry to trouble you, Senior. I'll take my leave first. After speaking, his figure was wrapped in a beam of dazzling golden light. He pierced through the void and disappeared into the horizon. Girl, come here. Uncle Changji waved at Bao Er, Grandpa Tao ancestor. Bao Er did not dare to neglect. She hurried forward with a well-behaved and respectful attitude. "Are you willing to cultivate with me?" the Tao ancestor asked. "Okay." Bauer smiled shyly. The Tao ancestor, Uncle Changji, was a living legend of the South. He was an expert of an era. If the old man was willing to teach her, of course she would learn. "Compared to Bauer, you and I are as cheap as roadside stones." Su Chung sighed to Hu Qinxiu. He used to think that if Hu Qinxiu and Bauer formed a good marriage, they would be well matched and would become a celestial couple in the eyes of the world. Now it seemed that Hu Qinxiu was not worthy. At the border of the Devil Luo Empire, half a month later, Qin Hao, dressed in a black robe, successfully crossed the Daqing's territory and came to the Devil Luo territory. In order not to attract the attention of the Daqing experts, he had to hide his aura and disguise himself as an ordinary cultivator. This took a lot of time. At this moment, after he passed the checkpoint, he took out the divine parasol tree that the Tao ancestor gave him from the storage ring and walked forward. The divine parasol tree was the favorite divine tree of the Phoenix divine bird. The Phoenix divine clan had the blood of the Phoenix god flowing in their bodies, so they naturally liked the aura of the divine tree very much. The divine tree in Qin Hao's hand was engraved with the Tao array of the Tao ancestor, which could capture the aura of the Phoenix and guide Qin how to find his senior sister's people. Why is there no reaction? The Wutong tree that Qin Hao was holding was actually a small tree trunk. It had 3 branches and 2 leaves hanging from each branch. The Tao ancestor said that after entering the Devil Luo territory, he could rely on the parasol tree to find the direction of his senior sister's people. But now, the divine tree in Qin Hao's hand was not moving at all. Could it be that the Tao ancestor's array had failed? Maybe I'm too far away from the territory of the Phoenix clan, beyond the range of the parasol tree's senses. I have to continue searching. Qin Hao's gaze swept across the surroundings. The undulating mountain range brought back memories of the past. It seemed that back then, he had led the army into the Devil Luo Empire from here and finally killed those rebellious lords. Chapter 1907. During the Battle of Mount Qianlong, Zhu Guxiu was injured by the rules of the Qianlong holy man Qin Hao did not witness the battle, but he was sure that Zhu Guxiu's injury would not recover in a short time. With the intelligence of the divine war guards, the situation of Wu's cultivation should have been reported to Zhang Wu. Before he was fully prepared, the possibility of the 7 great commanders moving out was not high. Even if there was, Feng Hua, Mount Dao, and Peng Lai had already set up teleportation formations and could respond at any time. Among them, the Zhuiying Sword Emperor was also a powerful helper. Qin Hao was relieved about the situation there. Zhang Wu can't figure out where I am. According to the East Continent cultivators, the Sunset Battle god rarely steps out of Sunset Peak. There must be a reason behind it. According to Qin Hao's understanding of Zhang Wu, whenever this happened in the past, Zhang Wu's cultivation would experience a huge leap. Could it be that he was in retreat? Could it be related to the Sunset Bow? I can't delay any longer. I have to find a Phoenix Grandmaster and return to Fenghua as soon as possible. Dusk was approaching. In the quiet and comfortable town, Qin Hao sat in a simple tea stall by the roadside. At this time, he put down the cup in his hand and held the divine parasol tree. His gaze was constantly looking at the distant sky. Sometimes, he lowered his head to look at the 3 branches growing on the divine parasol tree and frowned. More than 10 days had passed. From the time he set out until now, he had spent a whole month. He had searched all the secret realms and barren places in the All-Devil Empire, except for the All-Devil Empire's capital and a few famous big cities. In the end, the parasol tree did not respond. He did not find any clues. Did the Phoenix celestial tribe like to hide in the crowded big cities? Or maybe the Taoist ancestor made a mistake. It shouldn't be. Qin Hao's face was full of confusion. At this juncture, would the Taoist ancestor lie? Looking at the dark mountains, Mo Luo Empire was actually not that big. Even if he suppressed his cultivation to the level of an emperor, his perception was not weakened. If the parasol tree in his hand had the slightest reaction, he could detect it in time. Qin Hao considered whether to contact Mo Xian secretly and ask the Mo Luo royal family to help investigate. No way. The more people there were, the more mouths there would be. The slightest bit of carelessness and his whereabouts would definitely be spread to the setting sun peak through the war god guards. That would result in serious consequences. The divine parasol tree in your hands is very valuable. There was a pile of broken bamboo baskets on the side of the tea shed, and a few rotten fruits were scattered on the ground. A swarm of flies was buzzing around, and a dirty beggar with disheveled hair was sitting next to him. The beggar pushed his bangs aside with both hands and looked at the divine parasol tree in Qin Hao's hand with a strange expression. There was a faint smile on his face. You actually recognize this item? Qin Hao's eyes flashed with a strange light. The wudong tree was not rare, but not every wudong tree could be called a divine tree. If I can't recognize this thing, then wouldn't the old man, the grand phoenix ancestor, have an undeserved reputation? The beggar laughed hoarsely at Qin Hao. Tung! Qin Hao gripped the divine parasol tree tightly and stood up from his seat. He looked at the beggar with a serious expression. The phoenix ancestor? Judging from the way he dressed, he did not have anything to do with the Phoenix God Clan's ancestor at all. He might not be, but the beggar recognized the divine parasol tree. At this moment, Qin Hao was in a dilemma, and his eyes were filled with doubt. Give it to me, and I'll let you leave safely. How about it? The beggar spoke as if he was negotiating a deal with Qin Hao, but his tone was firm. Qin Hao quietly activated the 1,000 spirit fiery eyes, and traces of flame patterns appeared in his chakra eyes. He stared at the beggar, trying to see if he was real or fake. Strangely, not only could he not sense the beggar's cultivation level, but the 1,000 spirit fiery eyes could not see through him either. There were no traces of cultivation on him, and he looked like an ordinary person. He was also delirious, as if he had gone mad. You want it? Qin Hao handed over the divine parasol tree and said in a low voice, Come and take it. Okay. The beggar slowly stood up from the pile of bamboo baskets. He lowered his fluffy head and walked up step by step, reaching out to grab the divine parasol tree. Qin Hao flipped his palm and used the wood as a sword. When the beggar stretched out his hand, Qin Hao suddenly stabbed forward. In an instant, the piece of wutong tree bloomed with dazzling light. It was like a sharp sword light that pierced straight into the beggar's heart. You're courting death. A low roar rang out from the beggar's throat. When he lifted his head, raging flames suddenly appeared on his body. Instantly, a fiery glow shot up into the sky, burning the sky of the town red. A boundless aura exploded forth, completely ignoring Qin Hao's attack and receiving it with his bare hands. Buzz! The other end of the divine parasol tree was firmly grabbed by someone. Qin Hao felt as if his body was being squeezed tightly. He could not help but be shocked and blurted out, You're really from the Phoenix God Clan. The surprise came too quickly. After searching for a month, Qin Hao unexpectedly met his senior sister's clansmen in this secluded town. The flames of Taoism on the beggar's body were indeed the Phoenix Flame. Moreover, this person's cultivation was not ordinary, having reached the peak of Proving Way. Although he was a bit weak and could not be the Phoenix Grand Ancestor, Qin Hao was still excited. Let go, the beggar threatened. Streaks of blood climbed up to his eyes. He stared at Qin Hao with a faint murderous madness. Friend, you and I are not enemies. Qin Hao did not have time to introduce himself, nor did he have time to say the name of Monarch Qin Hao. The beggar's eyes flashed red, and his other hand slammed fiercely on Qin Hao's chest. Bang! This palm was extraordinarily heavy. It was far more powerful than what a Proving Way cultivator should have. When Qin Hao was hit, the qi and blood in his abdomen surged. He staggered backward, dragging the beggar with him. The realm of true self. Qin Hao was shocked. This beggar was a little unusual. Just now, there was no trace of cultivation at all. As soon as he made a move, he unleashed the strength of the peak of the Doctrine realm, which had already surprised Qin Hao. However, within a breath, The pressure he released rose from the peak of the doctrine realm to the great emperor of true self. It seemed that this person's cultivation could change at will. Qin Hao had never seen such a situation. It was not deliberately hidden. There were not many people in the world who could deceive Denda's perception. Especially under the 10,000 spirit fire eyes, warriors could not hide their strength even if they wanted to. But this beggar could not see through the 10,000 spirit fire eyes. The only explanation was that this person's strength was connected to his mood. It was a unique talent. I told you to let go. A roar like a tiger's roar spread. The violent sound waves swept across a radius of hundreds of meters. Under the beggar's roar, the tea shed, tables, and chairs all flew into the sky and shattered into dust. The sound waves spread out, and countless houses collapsed. A fist light condensed with the divine flames of the phoenix slammed forward. At this time, the strength of the way that the beggar exploded with was no weaker than Holy Emperor Jiang. Qin Hao had no chance to explain, and he could not let the beggar continue. Although the will of the great emperor of true self was not as strong as an unblemished emperor, it had the ability to injure or even kill an unblemished emperor. There was a buzz. Qin Hao's body also tumbled with monstrous flames, flowing like red blood. He punched out with his left fist, and the fist wrapped in the will of the way collided heavily with the beggar. Rumble. A series of earth-shattering sonic booms rang out. The divine Wutong tree was shattered by the domineering flames of the way. Qin Hao's body leaned backward, and he felt a brief moment of dizziness. He felt a sharp pain in his left hand that he had not felt for a long time. His body continued to fly backward under the impact of gravity. The beggar's situation was not much better than Qin Hao's. His dirty body rolled on the ground and crashed through several houses. He rolled along the ground for a long distance before coming to a stop. But in the next second, an even more violent aura shook the world. Seeing that the divine Wutong tree was destroyed, the beggar howled to the sky. At this moment, his eyes were completely occupied by the color of blood, and his emotions had fallen into an extreme rage. He stepped on the ground as if he was flying. With one step, he was dozens of feet away. His body flashed twice, and he was in front of Qin Hao. Accompanied by a sharp phoenix cry, a huge illusion of a phoenix descended on the beggar's body. He pulled his hand toward the sky, pulling out a dazzling sword aura, and slashed at Qin Hao. "Stop! I'm not an enemy of the Phoenix clan." The remaining half of the divine Wutong tree in Qin Hao's hand was burned to ashes. He quickly explained, but he realized that his explanation was unnecessary. At this moment, the beggar's aura had surpassed Holy Emperor Jiang and reached the level of great ancestor Ning Wu in Li Xiuxing. In desperation, Qin Hao formed a seal with his hands. The will of the emperor resonated with the great path, and the power of the rules of meteorites flowed through his body. He blasted out balls of red lotus overlord fire like meteorites. Destroy. The red sword aura slashed through the void, mixed with madness and rage. The beggar's sword slashed down, and countless meteorites were destroyed. The sword aura slashed at the bottom of Qin Hao's feet. Qin Hao looked at the scorched sword mark beneath his feet. He used fleeting step to evade the attack, but the sword still managed to land on the sole of his feet. If he had moved another 3 inches forward, his shoes and toes would have been chopped off. Very strong. Not only was the beggar powerful, but the will of the emperor was also strong. What was this thing? With the beggar's combat effectiveness, no one in the same realm could withstand it. Even the disciples of the divine palace would find it difficult to compete with him. At present, Li Xiuxing would definitely not be able to defeat this person. After all, not every perfected true self could split the flames of the rules released by Qin Hao's flawless power. He even doubted whether Zhuge Xiu, the weakest of the 3 commanders on Sunset Peak, could defeat this beggar. After all, the beggar was currently able to fight flawless, perfected true self. Although Qin Hao did not use his true strength, it was enough to show how amazing this person's combat effectiveness was. Roar! Scales grew out, and quickly covered the surface of Qin Hao's body. His figure gradually became majestic and tall in the bright light of the scales. In this battle, he would not use the Great Void Sword or the indestructible law. If the power of two souls could not defeat the beggar, then Qin Hao could go back directly, so as not to embarrass himself in front of the Phoenix clan. Kill. The beggar's scarlet eyes were full of madness, and the anger in his aura became more and more intense. Along with this, the sense of pressure he exuded became heavier and heavier. He folded his hands and raised them above his head, slashing toward Qin Hao. Screech! The incomparably huge shadow of the phoenix spat out flames, rolling and spreading, as if everything was about to be burned. Chapter 1908. The beggar put his palms together and extended them forward. His aura was extremely ferocious. The shadow of the phoenix enveloped his body, and he spat out a beam of blazing flame from his mouth. Boom! The ground cracked open, and a majestic gully was created by the flame. It was like a flaming divine blade that rushed towards Qin Hao. Qin Hao stood in place, covered in scales. The tremors under his feet were very intense. A huge, flaming divine dragon circled around him. The flaming divine dragon spat out a dragon's breath as the fist light blasted forward. Suddenly, the breaths of the two ancient divine beasts collided. Waves of fire rose into the sky and turned into a terrifying storm that raged. Particles of phoenix divine flame permeated the air and penetrated the red lotus gang chi. They touched Qin Hao's dragon scales, and those scales began to melt. Qin Hao felt a piercing pain in his body. The strength of the beggar's phoenix flames was beyond his imagination. The flames could even penetrate his red lotus will of the way. In the past, only Qin Hao's opponents had experienced such a situation. Now it was happening to him. Bang! His fist, which was filled with the laws of meteorite, smashed heavily on the beggar's face. The ferocious force smashed the beggar's cheek, and the beggar's head was tilted to the side. His body was almost sent flying. Monstrous anger appeared in the beggar's eyes. His will of the way was controlled by his emotions. He forcibly stabilized himself, and then punched Qin Hao in the stomach. A whirlpool-like fist force wreaked havoc, shattering a piece of dragon scales. Qin Hao felt a gush of bitter bile rising from his throat. He felt as if he had been hit by a battering ram, and his body was about to be pierced through. There is a limit to my patience. Qin Hao roared, and his eyes gradually turned scarlet. Affected by the power of the dragon, his emotions also had a hint of madness. It was as if the beggar hadn't heard him. He roared madly as boundless phoenix flames converged on his fists. He brandished a set of fist techniques that Qin Hao had never seen before. Fist after fist blasted out, causing space to shatter and deafening. An even more dazzling light flowed on Qin Hao's body. The increase in the power of the dragon soul caused his desire to battle to rise again and again. For balls of golden light shot out from his fists and arms. With a hum, the aura of the Great Path swept out. The Mizar Battle Emperor's art was activated, and Qin Hao's punch broke through everything. Suddenly, the fist shadows that filled the sky were destroyed. The red lotus fire merged with the rules of the meteorite. With the support of Jean Dilly, the flames of the way condensed into a fist that was larger than a mountain. It directly sent the beggar flying. The phantom of the phoenix that enveloped him screeched again and again. It seems to be suppressed. Far away, in a corner of the town, many people were standing there to watch the battle. Among them, an elder with white hair and beard watched the battle and let out a slight cry of surprise. It's normal for him to be suppressed because his cultivation level is low. Surrounded by many figures, the dignified elder who was like a king among emperors spoke calmly. Standing in the crowd, he was taller than everyone else and had an oppressive aura. At this moment, Monarch Jingji was standing beside this tall and dignified elder. He had witnessed the mad ancestor being forced back by Qin Hao. A trace of surprise flashed across his face. Just now, the Grand Elder had said that the Mad Ancestor was suppressed by Qin Hao because his cultivation level was low. On the surface, it sounded normal, but Monarch Jingji didn't think so. Everyone present, including the old and young of the Phoenix gods, didn't think it was a derogatory remark. Being able to suppress the Mad Ancestor showed how powerful Qin Hao was. Even though his cultivation level was one level higher than the Mad Ancestor, they had never seen the Grand Elder suppress the furious Mad Ancestor. Not to mention the Grand Elder. Even if there were any unblemished great emperors outside, the Phoenix gods present didn't think they could defeat the Mad Ancestor. Can we ask them to stop now? Monarch Jingji asked. He looked at the dignified elder beside him. The current Phoenix Grand Elder was the only strong cultivator in the entire East Continent who could make the Sunset Battle God look at him seriously. Go, the Phoenix Grand Elder said faintly. He could tell that the Mad Ancestor wasn't a match for Qin Hao. Moreover, Qin Hao didn't seem to be using his full strength, as expected of the East Continent's Dendi. Today, he had seen that the rumors were true. Boom, 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 boom. In front of them, earth-shattering fist energies exploded continuously. As he circulated the 9-Palace Battle Emperor art, Qin Hao's close combat strength was enhanced. At this moment, the Mad Beggar was trapped in Denda's storm-like attacks. He could only defend passively. His angry face was bruised and swollen, and many of his bones were broken. He couldn't hold on much longer. Dendi, please stop. Monarch Jingji rushed into the battle and stopped him. One of Qin Hao's hands pressed down on the beggar's throat, firmly pressing him onto the ground. His other fist was just about to ruthlessly follow up with a few more punches. Regardless of whether this person was the Phoenix Ancestor or not, just based on this crazy energy, if you don't subdue him, he won't stop. At this moment, Jingji's voice sounded. Qin Hao froze. He slowly turned his head and let out a sigh of relief. However, the hand on the Mad Beggar's throat still didn't loosen. Mad Ancestor, stop messing around. Jingji smiled apologetically at Qin Hao. She walked forward, ready to comfort the Mad Ancestor. Who would have thought that the Phoenix Mad Ancestor would stare at Jingji with bloodshot eyes and roar at her? The roar was as terrifying as a tiger's roar mixed with a wave of fire chi that heavily struck her body. As if struck by lightning, Jingji was heavily thrown back, smashing under the feet of everyone. A mouthful of vermilion blood splashed out. Mad Tang, the Phoenix Grand Elder shouted. He held something in his hand and shot it over. A red dot of light entered the Mad Ancestor's forehead. His bloodshot eyes gradually lost their color. The evil chi emitted from his body also started to dissipate. His emotions gradually calmed down. Phew! Qin Hao raised his hand to wipe the sweat off his forehead. The scales on his body melted into his flesh. Feeling that the person under his palm was no longer so violent, he slowly loosened his grip on the Mad Beggar's throat. Getting up, Qin Hao looked at the fallen monarch Jingji. This throat injury wasn't light. He said, I should have sensed that we were trapped in the barrier. The Phoenix God Clan's greeting is really special. He had searched all over the Luo Mo territory, but couldn't find the Phoenix God Clan's territory. However, in this small town, he met the Mad Beggar who used the Phoenix Dao Flame. Moreover, the Divine Wudong tree didn't seem to have done anything. This proved that the Mad Beggar had done it deliberately. He had the ability to block the Divine Wudong tree's perception. Besides, what was this Mad Beggar's situation? Did he release him to test Denda's strength? The Divine Wudong tree is gone. Mad Tang lay on the ground. When the color of blood faded from his eyes and his emotions calmed down, his eyes slowly became hollow. He mumbled in his sleep. Jingji, bring the guest and the Mad Ancestor to Phoenix Tower Forest, said the Phoenix Grand Elder. The Phoenix Clan Ancestor said. After saying that, he disappeared from where he was, and the cry of a phoenix shot into the distance. Chapter 1909. Qianqian Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Chapter 1909. Divine Phoenix, are you interested in the divine path? Phoenix Tower Forest. In the center of a lush, ancient forest, there were 5 gigantic divine parasol trees. Their green trunks were dozens of feet tall, and their palm-shaped leaves were swaying in the wind. The yellowish-brown leaves were covered in a layer of golden flames, which were densely inlaid and dazzling. In particular, the one in the center of the 4 divine trees was the tallest and most spectacular. It was at least 300 meters tall, and its canopy stretched out like a giant umbrella that covered the sky. Its golden branches and leaves covered a whole quarter of the ancient forest, and spherical fruit cores fell from above, making people look up and gasp in amazement. Tang, his intellect is damaged, and he is easily angered. Moreover, his phoenix flames can increase with his anger, and his murderous nature is astonishing. The only thing in the clan that can calm him down is this parasol tree stamen. The phoenix ancestor sat cross-legged on the huge divine parasol tree in the center like an immortal picking flowers. He reached out and plucked a pink stamen from the side. Then he pricked his finger, and his blood merged with the stamen. The pink stamen became even redder. He flicked his finger, and a red dot slowly flew down to Crazed Tang's forehead and entered between his eyebrows. Qin Hao looked at Crazed Tang, who was fiddling with the soil like a child and burying the parasol tree seeds in the soil. As the phoenix ancestor's blood entered between his eyebrows, Crazed Tang's murderous aura dissipated slightly. His intellect was damaged. He had no sense of pain. He was easily angered, and his Tao flames could increase his Tao power and anger. Who would have thought that a person who looked stupid on the surface would be as murderous as a flawless heavenly emperor once he went crazy? There were no rules, or perhaps it was better to say that his anger was the power of his rules. It couldn't harm others and would instead harm Crazed Tang himself. According to the Phoenix ancestor, if Crazed Tang was allowed to rage endlessly, he would eventually be incinerated by his own phoenix flames. This was really... Qin Hao thought of a sentence at this moment. The heavens were fair. When they gave you a certain ability, they would also take away another precious existence. This sentence was the most realistic portrayal of Crazed Tang. Crazed Tang's Tao flame was stronger than all the other members of the Phoenix God clan, and it could continue to increase with his anger. In the end, it would reach a level that even the Phoenix Patriarch didn't dare to imagine. At the same time, the heavenly Tao deprived his brother of his intelligence and sense of pain. Because it didn't feel pain, it was even more violent. When it fought with others, it always took their lives and never knew what fear was. The Mad Ancestor is the Elder's younger brother. Only when the Elder's blood fuses with the Phoenix tree stamen can we suppress the Mad Ancestor's murderous nature and calm his anger, Jing Ji said with a heavy sigh. It was hard to imagine what the Mad Ancestor would do if the old ancestor of a certain heaven was no longer in this world. Leaving Quang Tang in the clan would be a disaster. Perhaps the old ancestor would take the Mad Ancestor with him when he returns to the heavens. Tell me, Dendi, why are you here? The Phoenix ancestor didn't want to talk too much about Quang Tang, so he returned to the main topic and looked at Qin Hao under the tree. He had seen Dinda's ability, and it was indeed amazing. According to Jing Ji, this former overlord of the East Continent had received the help of a Phoenix clan expert and formed a relationship with them. What was Dinda's purpose today? Senior Phoenix ancestor, I think Monarch Jing Ji has already told you about me. Qin Hao said. The Phoenix ancestor waved his hand. I don't know who that person is. If you come to investigate her background, I'm afraid you will be disappointed. The lifespan of the Phoenix God clan was much longer than that of ordinary humans, especially when they cultivated to the first realm of the Emperor realm. They were close to the divine realm, and their lifespan would increase greatly. Because of this, if a member of the Phoenix God clan came out in the early years, it would be difficult to investigate. Senior, please let me finish. Qin Hao didn't come because of Muri's background. He said, the Sunset Battle God John Wu is the leader of the 5 realms of the East Continent. In the past, he and I were brothers, but because I was schemed against in the Valley of the Gods, my emperor body was destroyed. I cultivated again. Now that I've returned, the Path Peak has been taken by Zhang Wu. You want us to help you take back the Path Peak? Asked the Phoenix ancestor. Yes. Qin Hao thought for a while and nodded. Even if it wasn't for the Sunset Peak, he still said it directly. Huh. The Phoenix ancestor laughed. I came to repay your kindness, but I came to borrow your troops. Was it as simple as saying a few words to become enemies with the Sunset Battle God? If they lost, the entire Phoenix God clan would be doomed. Qin Hao's expression was bitter. As expected, their friendship was too thin. How could the Phoenix ancestor agree to help just because of his senior sister? It was reasonable. In fact, he had been taken care of by his senior sister many times, so he should do something useful for the Phoenix God clan. Now that he hadn't repaid her kindness, he came to ask for help. It was unreasonable. Senior, if I take down the Sunset Peak, the Phoenix God clan will live in Daqin for billions of miles of mountains and rivers, Qin Hao said. As a descendant of the Phoenix God clan, why would he need to hide and be isolated from the world? Since he was part of the God clan, he should shine with the light of the God clan and be worshipped by the world. There were many things that Qin Hao could do for the Phoenix God clan. Moreover, they also needed more resources. Hiding in this ancient forest within the boundary would only make them unable to move forward. Over time, their talent would gradually deteriorate. 10,000 years later, could they still be part of the God clan? There's no need, the Phoenix ancestor said. He understood what Dendi was saying. The world was chaotic, especially after the opening of the Burial God ruins. Emperor's possessions and divine possessions appeared one after another. Once the Phoenix God clan followed Dendi into the world, they would become bones without success. In comparison, it was more appropriate to live and work peacefully in the boundary forest. Senior, don't you have any ambition in your heart? Qin Hao said unwillingly. Of course I do, but ambition is not something that can be exchanged with life. The Phoenix ancestor couldn't afford to gamble, nor did he want to gamble. How could Dendi make the Phoenix God clan work for him with just a few words? Just for the incomplete life feather in Qin Hao's hand? It wasn't worth it. Phew. Qin Hao sighed and looked at the Phoenix ancestor on the parasol tree. Was he really unwilling to come out? As expected, he was overconfident. Senior sister wasn't here. He and Jingji were just strangers. Why would she help him? If you come as a guest, the God clan welcomes Dendi. Other than that, we can't help you. If you still don't give up and want to scheme against us, then you can go back. Jingji, see the guest out, the Phoenix ancestor said. Sorry, you go back, Jingji said helplessly. Jingji said helplessly. She stretched out her hand to lead the way for Qin Hao. That year, in the deep abyss of the Valley of the Gods, Qin Hao had snatched the flames of the way from the divine tree from Zhang Yin and gifted it to his son, Luo Lan. After that, Luo Lan had refined the flames of the way, and his abilities had indeed increased significantly. However, he could not risk the lives of his entire clan just because of this. Wasn't the sacrifice a little too big? My relationship with the Phoenix God clan is not as simple as you think, but I won't force you. If you need anything, you can send someone to the North Territory Phoenix Flower at any time. I'm willing to help as long as it's within my power. Goodbye, Qin Hao said with a fist salute. He, Muri, Eastern Sky, and Zhang were real siblings. If his senior brothers and senior sisters were alive, he wouldn't have to waste his breath. Unfortunately, that's right. Qin Hao suddenly turned around and looked at the Phoenix ancestor. I see that you have completed the unblemished realm and are close to the Nirvana realm. I wonder if you're interested in the divine path. I happen to have a kind of divine path. If even the divine path can't move you, then I can only. Haha, what a pity. As he shook his head, Qin Hao's gaze fell on Kuang Tang. Kuang Tang's innate lack of intelligence couldn't be remedied by pills and techniques. Even the Yaoguang Peak's meditation mantra was useless. However, if he could master the power of the divine path and reverse the way of heaven, the Phoenix ancestor's younger brother's intelligence might be restored. What a pity. He gave up the opportunity in vain. Chapter 1910. Above the North Sea of the Northern Territory, two figures flew in the sky, heading towards the 100-spirit Tao Peak of the Phoenix Flower Nine Islands. Qin Hao smiled and held 3 jade bottles in his hand. They contained the blood pistol pills given by the Phoenix clan elder. They were made from his blood and the phoenix tree stamen. They had the effect of calming Kuang Tang's violent emotions. They cannot be lost or damaged. At this time, Qin Hao looked at Kuang Tang beside him. He recalled the scene under the phoenix tree when Qin Hao used the Great Void Immortal Treasure to perform the reincarnation rules of order. The Phoenix clan elder's heart was unsettled. When a martial artist's great Tao was flawed, extraordinary pills and techniques could fix it. Only the divine Tao could make up for it. As expected, the Phoenix clan elder was tempted. As the elder brother and the Phoenix clan elder, how could he bear to see his younger brother live like a madman for the rest of his life? After witnessing the power of Qin Hao's divine Tao and feeling the supreme divine Tao intent, the Phoenix clan elder made the decision to let Qin Hao take Kuang Tang away from the clan. Although I couldn't get the Phoenix clan elder to come out, it's not bad. Qin Hao smiled. He was satisfied with Kuang Tang's strength. After all, he had fought with him before and knew what to expect. The Phoenix clan elder also admitted that in terms of talent, Kuang Tang was definitely stronger than him. This was something that the entire Phoenix God clan agreed with. Why are you staring at me? Kuang Tang trimmed his hair slightly and changed into a set of clean and decent clothes. He was a guest at the 100-Spirit Island and naturally had to take care of himself to prevent the East Continent's emperors from mocking the Phoenix clan. Sensing Qin Hao's gaze, Kuang Tang raised his head and glared at him. This person had been looking at him strangely the entire time. Was there something wrong with him? Tang, your elder brother asked me to take care of you, so we have to make some things clear. Qin Hao cleared his throat and spoke in a dignified manner. Don't worry, I'll listen to you. I'll beat up whoever you ask me to. Kuang Tang knew what Qin Hao meant. He followed him to be his fighter. Qin Hao was startled. He looked at Kuang Tang with some astonishment. Kuang Tang's intelligence didn't seem to be wrong. He was very reasonable. I was born without a part of my spiritual sense, causing my mind to be in chaos. When I go crazy, I can't control myself. Also, I don't feel pain. I'm not stupid. Crazy Tang protested. Crazy was crazy, but he wasn't an idiot. Don't look at him like that. Oh, sorry. Qin Hao hurriedly apologized. He had only interacted with Kuang Tang for a short period of time, so he didn't understand Kuang Tang well enough. It turned out that Kuang Tang was quite normal when he wasn't acting up. This made things easier. Qin Hao was afraid that Kuang Tang would act up randomly and get out of hand. That would undoubtedly mean bringing a dangerous person into Bailing. In fact, Kuang Tang's situation wasn't too bad. He had fought with Qin Hao because of the divine parasol tree in his possession. Kuang Tang had special feelings for the divine parasol tree. The parasol tree's aura could calm him down, especially the stamen of the parasol tree, which innately made him want to protect it. When he saw an outsider holding the parasol tree, he didn't hesitate to seize it. The two of them headed toward Bailing Tao Peak at a constant speed. After traveling for 2 months, they left the territory of the Phoenix clan. Qin Hao secretly met with Monarch Mo Luo and Mo Xian. Mo Xian had refined the void chain into a monarch spirit. After more than 20 years, his ability had improved a lot, and he had reached the realm of true self. Now, he didn't know how the situation was at Bailing Tao Peak. Everyone had entered the Tao world to cultivate and whether their strength had improved. Qin Hao was looking forward to it. After safely passing through the territory of the Daqin Empire, Qin Hao brought Kuang Tang back to Bailing Tao Peak. Currently, in the formation realm of Bailing Tao Peak, the members of various forces and their descendants were in full swing. Ever since Saint Emperor Jiang, Ancestor Li, Ancestor Dao Hai, Feng Lan, and Wei Wei entered the array, the cultivators had changed again and again. The remaining island masters of the Phoenix Flower sect, as well as several former island masters and elders, Bao Lian Han, Sikong Shu, Zhong Liqing, and Wen Ninglan were the first seats of the 9 branches. Among them, except for Bao they were all monarch masters. This included the second seats of the 9 branches, Zhu Sheng, and the others. The outstanding disciples of the Phoenix Flower sect entered the array one after another, especially Shi Dong of the Dao sect, the Shuo clan of the East Sea, the fairies of the Aqua Jade Palace, Xiaogua, Yishuihan, and Qinyan. Many geniuses gathered at Bailing Dao Peak and launched an extremely grand cultivation atmosphere. It also spurred the ordinary disciples of the 3 major orthodoxies to cultivate crazily. In addition, many people from western Liang, the northern border, and the southern region were still on their way. Because of the long journey and the large scale, they arrived a little late. In this battle, Qin Hao showed his determination to cut off all means of retreat. If he failed, many people would be drowned in the chaos of war. The overlords of the 5 realms in the East Continent felt the cultivation aura of the North Territory. This matter could not be hidden from the eyes of the monarchs of the 5 realms. Imperceptibly, the atmosphere in the East Continent became more and more tense with the arrival of people from the 3 realms. Everyone had a feeling that a storm was coming. The North Territory was clearly preparing for war. The orthodoxies gathered together because of Dindi. He was preparing to attack the Sunset Peak and compete with the Sunset War God. Under the impetus of the general trend, the East Continent, which was already in a tense atmosphere, continued to fight among the various forces. Although most of the fights were between the second-rate and third-rate sect, it still intensified the division of the East Continent. Chaos. The 5 realms were in chaos. The Jueying Sword Palace and the Thunder Pool Palace in the Middle Territory suddenly built a teleportation array that connected to the North Territory. Their masters and disciples all poured into Bailing Dao Peak through the array. Half a month later, Bai Yueshuan's entire clan left. They abandoned their ancestral land and rushed to Bailing Dao Peak to become the overlord of the North Territory. The leader of the South Territory's Sacred Sword Wind People, the Wind Ancestor, along with the Celestial Cliffs Patriarch, personally went to Sunset Peak to ask for the protection of the Sunset War God. They were willing to lead their entire clan to obey the War God and listen to his orders. The remnants of the Ghost Baron Nation, Divine Herbalist Valley, Divine Firmament Hall, and many other overlords and first-rate forces submitted to Empress Ling Xian of Daqin. Empress Ling Xian's imperial flag floated above the territories of these former overlords. Other than orthodoxies like the Vajra Institute and Jixia Academy, the entire East Continent was in chaos. The 5 realms were in chaos, and everyone was in danger. Every day, there would be overlord forces rushing to the North Territory, Sunset Peak, and Daqin Empire. Even the Ludao nation across the sea was restless. Unknowingly, the 5 realms of the East Continent had evolved into a tripartite balance of power. Under the crushing force of the general trend, no force could stay out of it. Everyone was following the trend. The various overlords had bet their fates on one of the 3 giants. It was up to them to see who would be the final winner of this gamble. At this time, on Bailing Dao Peak, strong rays of light surged. The Dao Peak had expanded dozens of times from its original foundation. Even so, it still could not meet the needs of cultivation. Now that the popularity of Bailing Dao Peak has far surpassed that of Phoenix Flower Island, it's time to change the leader of this island. In the Dao Hall, a row of figures stood there, overlooking the dense crowd of disciples below. Each of these figures had an extraordinary temperament. They were the grand ancestors of the various overlords. Feng Lan was wearing a graceful and noble sovereign robe, exuding the majesty of an empress. She kept shaking her head and chuckling. She was considering whether to give up the position of sovereign and let Yun Ro take over. I'm afraid this is exactly what you want. Bai Di, the grand ancestor of Bai Yuexian, said with a smile. From his face, Bai Di was a handsome middle-aged man, exuding a scholarly aura. It's been 5 years, and there's been no movement from Sunset Peak. If this continues, Bailing City will be overcrowded. Lei Chuan, the second hall master of the Judgment Hall, said, his eyes full of envy. Now Dao Sect, Immortal Sect, Shuo Clan, Sword Palace, Judgment Hall, and many other overlords had gathered in the city. Even this group of old men had gathered together. Looking around, such a grand scene could only be compared to the imperial banquet held by Qin Hao 600 years ago. When would the Judgment Hall be able to usher in such glory? Daoist High, I'll have to trouble you and Emperor by to cast a spell to strengthen the island. In the center of the Emperor's, Qin Hao's silver hair fluttered as he stood with his hands behind his back. Indeed, there were too many people. If this continued, even if the experts of the various sects restrained their Emperor Qi, it would affect the foundation of the island. If they were not careful, the island could sink. Now, there were more than 300 emperors on the island, and the number was still rising. It was no joke. If any emperor did not control it well, it could cause a sea change. All right, Ancestor Daoist High nodded and looked at Ancestor by Yuexian. The two turned into dazzling Emperor Qi and soared into the sky. Soon, a tremor came from the Dao Hall. They began to build the island and expand the land area. Ancestor Daoist High was good at this. With Emperor Bai's help, it was not difficult to turn the ascending valley into land. When are you going to move? Fenglan looked at Qin Hao and asked. 5 years. It was far beyond expectations. Sunset Peak was very quiet. Even if the Sunset Battle Immortal already knew that Denda was here, he was still calm. Of course, this was also related to the situation. The power gathered around Qin Hao was not something the Battle Immortal guards could easily touch. He's waiting for me to take the initiative. Qin Hao's expression was very calm. Zhan Wu's intention was very clear after not taking action for 5 years. Sunset Peak has the terrain. Even if there is no one who is good at array Dao, the Sunset Battle Immortal still has an advantage. Zhuiying's Sword Emperor said, "What about you? How long more do you need to prepare?" "Wait a little longer." Qin Hao replied, "Wait for Old Jiang, Ancestor Li, and the others." After 5 years, no one had successfully broken through the first level of perfected true self. Although the strong cultivators on 100 Spirits Island were enough to compete with the Battle Immortal Guards, Qin Hao still wanted to accumulate more strength. After all, no one could retreat from this battle. It was not easy to merge with the Heavenly Way and reach the flawless Emperor intent. Of course, it was not too difficult. Li Xiuxing, Ancestor Daoist High, Emperor Bai, Wei Wei, Fenglan, and Crazed Hang all had the qualifications to enter the flawless realm. It was just that their Emperor intent could not be opened. If any of them entered the flawless path, Qin Hao would dare to directly attack Sunset Peak. At this moment, above the dojo below, a beam of light suddenly flew out from a formation realm. In an instant, the void tribulation clouds wandered. Huge bolts of lightning tore apart and extended. It was a natural phenomenon. An Emperor Tribulation descended. Emperor Tribulation of True Self. It's that junior from Shiliang. Zhuiying looked at Qin Hao and said, "Congratulations." Qin Hao smiled. He did not expect that after Wuk, the second person to enter the Emperor realm of True Self would be Su Jin. It was indeed worthy of celebration. Chapter 1911. Su Jin's talent was not bad to begin with, and after entering the Divine Palace and receiving the teachings of the Yaoguang Deity Lord, he learned the best sound Emperor technique. In the past 20 years, he had been cultivating in the Medicine Valley and improved rapidly. He had long become an emperor. Today, using the power of the Matrix to break through the True Self Imperial Gate, everything was logical. At this time, an incomparably vast tribulation cloud was brewing, and doomsday-like scenes shrouded the void of 100 Spirit Peak. The aura of heaven's might descended, and rays of light of catastrophe spread out. Su Jin rose into the sky in his white robe, and the light of music floated around him as he took the initiative to withstand the great path Emperor Tribulation. Boom! Crack! A deafening roar exploded. Everyone looked up and saw a beam of blinding light of catastrophe of the great path falling down, blasting towards Su Jin's imperial body. Su Jin emptied his spiritual consciousness and entered a state of vacuum, opening himself up to the baptism of the Great Path Emperor Tribulation. Only through the power of the Heavenly Path Emperor Tribulation could he forge a stronger Emperor spirit. On his body, dense threads of light of catastrophe wandered, and his skin was being cut and torn apart. The power of the Great Path Emperor Tribulation poured into his flesh and blood, destroying wildly, mixed with an extremely terrifying destructive power. Su Jin silently endured the Great Path Emperor Tribulation. This terrifying power could destroy him, but it could also make him stronger. What he needed to do was to break through his own limits. Countless people looked up and watched with shocked eyes as a true self-great emperor went through the tribulation. There were 4 levels of the imperial path, 36 tribulations, and 3 tribulations of the true self. Naturally, Su Jin successfully endured the first Emperor Tribulation. Then, the light of catastrophe became bigger and bigger, turning into a pillar of light that reached the sky. The power of the Great Path radiated for thousands of miles, and it fell heavily from the tribulation cloud. Su Jin still did not resist. He endured the power of the tribulation entering his body, refining his soul and strengthening his flesh and blood. Although his imperial body was torn apart and filled with a large amount of blood, an extremely shocking aura was slowly born from his seemingly severely injured body. It was as if the blood that flew out were impurities of the Great Path that were expelled from his body by the power of the tribulation. Buzz! The huge tribulation cloud rotated, and in the surging light, a figure suddenly descended. His body shape and appearance were exactly the same as Su Jin's, condensed by the will of the Heavenly Path. This figure's temperament was unparalleled, and he played a flute. Immediately, the sound of the Heavenly Path radiated down, rushing into Su Jin's ears, as if trying to destroy his soul. At this moment, Su Jin finally moved. Just like when Meng Xiang went through the tribulation all those years ago, his empty spiritual sense and will of the Emperor suddenly exploded. His body was wrapped in a strong light of the Emperor, and he also played on the flute. The sound waves of the Great Path radiated out, and the void roared. It interweaved with the sound of the tribulation that was pressing down and affected the figure condensed by the will of the heavens. Many people present couldn't understand it, and they only felt that the nature of these two sounds were completely different. The suppressive sound of the heavenly Tao was filled with destruction, whereas the melody played by Su Jin gurgled, and it was very pleasant to hear. It was like a flowing stream, yet it contained a continuous and boundless might. Be with. Soon, with a loud shattering sound, the will figure above Su Jin's head collapsed and dissipated, along with the sound waves of the heavenly path heavens that suppressed everything. The vast tribulation cloud that enveloped Hundred Spirit Path Peak also slowly faded from everyone's sight, and the scene returned to its original state. At this time, Emperor Su Jin's body was extremely bright, and his golden imperial chi was even more sacred. A ring of great path light appeared behind his head, making him look like a celestial being. Congratulations, Emperor Su. Congratulations, Senior Su, for successfully passing the tribulation. Amazing. At this time, the entire Hundred Spirit Path Peak burst into cheers. The emperors of the various forces, as well as their disciples, saw Su Jin easily resist the Heavenly Path Emperor Tribulation and forge his imperial true body, and they all congratulated him. Su Jin was indeed powerful. Emperor Bai, Samsara, Shadowless, Hyuning, and many other emperors of the previous generation felt that they were inferior to him. When they passed the true self Emperor Tribulation, it was not an exaggeration to say that they had narrowly escaped death. On the other hand, Su Jin seemed to have the entire process of passing the tribulation under his control. This kind of calmness was really admirable and admirable. Big brother, I succeeded. Su Jin dispersed the Emperor's ring of the Great Path and landed beside Qin Hao with bloodstains. After successfully passing the tribulation, he came to find someone to share his joy with. And so, he came to find Qin Hao. Not bad. Qin Hao nodded and said with a smile instead of praise. Su Jin's skills were all taught by Yao Guang Deity Lord, and he had also been tempered by the Hidden Path Spirit Waterfall and the Xintian Furnace Cave. The Divine Palace disciples naturally had an easier time passing the tribulation than the emperors of the outside world. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Recently, she had been accompanying Bao Er, as well as Xiao Yi, Tang Dingtian, and the others who had rushed over from the northern border. Therefore, she didn't focus on cultivating in the formation orb-like Wei Wei. We've gone through many life and death situations. We can also go through this battle. Qin Hao reached out his warm hand and held Xiao Han's palm. Xiao Han felt the warmth from him, and her nervous expression relaxed a little. She closed her eyes, and a layer of Emperor's Qi swirled around her. The red light on her body grew more and more intense. Suddenly, there was an ear-piercing sound, and a sharp arrow radiance materialized from her body, floating between the two of them. Crimson Setting Sun was the first arrow that Qin Hao had refined with his blood essence in his previous life. This arrow was also the one with the most blood among the 3 divine arrows. It had a powerful shattering effect and could directly penetrate an emperor's body. Red Dian was the second divine arrow that Qin Hao had refined after Crimson Red. Red Dian wasn't as sturdy as Crimson Red, but because it was nourished by Tao intent, it had the power to kill souls. Even if it didn't hit its target, it could still kill with Tao intent. Back then, if Zhang Wu had used Red Dian to attack Wei Wei, she probably wouldn't have been able to hold out until Qin Hao broke into the Luoshui catacombs. The third arrow was called Banestone. Qin Hao didn't have its special abilities. Not long after he had refined the arrow, he had stepped into the God-slaying formation. Therefore, he didn't have much time or opportunity to strengthen this arrow. However, it was unknown whether Zhang Wu had integrated his Tao intent into Banestone. Qin Hao only had Crimson Red. Chapter 1912. In the vast North Sea, a ferocious ancient dragon whale was traveling on the water. Its sovereign lord-level aura spread out. On its enormous body, which was the size of an island, stood a slim and graceful woman. The woman and the dragon whale followed the familiar path silently, gradually leaving the 100-spirit path peak. The shocking battle between the North Territory and the Sunset Peak would erupt overnight. Bauer felt that she should bid farewell to the honest uncle because no one knew what the final outcome of this battle would be. Perhaps many people would die. Even Bauer, who was Dinda's daughter, might die. I haven't seen Uncle in 5 years. I hope that this time it won't be forever. Bauer muttered silently. With the return of the Elixir Emperor, there were more and more experts on the Bai Ling Dao Peak in recent years. Even Qin Shilong, the great elder of the Qin clan in the western Liang, and Xiao Wudi from the northern borderline came. There were countless uncles and elders, and Bauer could not recognize all of them. In the past, she'd always felt that she was lonely. But now, when facing so many clansmen, 7th aunt, 8th aunt, 3rd uncle, 6th master, and numerous brothers and sisters of the same generation, the waves of enthusiasm that could topple mountains and overturn seas caused her to feel suffocated, and it caused her to slightly miss the tranquility of the past. Bauer was not disgusted by this. On the contrary, it made her very happy. She felt the warmth of a big family, but she could not accept it for a while. There were too many people. Uncle is a very powerful person. It would be great if he could participate in this battle. Bauer thought of the simple figure watering the plants and smiled. But she knew that with the uncle's personality, he would not be on the same side as the North Territory's emperors. The uncle was an expert who had seen through the mortal world and loved peace. His character was more noble than Dindi and the sunset battle god. It was a pity that such an unparalleled expert missed the most eye-catching heavenly battle in the divine wilderness continent. It was a pity. If the uncle was willing, he should be able to shine like Dindi and the sunset battle god, be respected by the warriors of the 4 regions, and be remembered forever in history. The dragon whale was very fast. Before long, it had brought to the most remote part of the North Sea. This place felt like the border of the sea. The sky was gray, and there was a strange power of the great path that connected to the sea. It was as if one could cross it and go to another world. However, when Bauer arrived here today, she no longer saw the dense sea fog. As far as the eye could see, the surface of the sea was clear and the air was astonishingly pure. Uncle Long, did you run to the wrong place? Bao. Frowned and revealed a puzzled expression. If you want to die faster, you can rush up now. I guarantee that you won't even be able to see Qin Hao's face. You'll be immediately torn apart by the 6 flawless experts under his command, not even leaving a trace of your flesh. Zhan Wu's tall and burly figure appeared beside Xinyuan Wutian. The 4 flawless great emperors of the divine martial hall stared at him coldly. 4 flawless great emperors shrouded him. Xinyuan Wutian couldn't help but tremble and laugh strangely. Indeed, he hadn't completely stepped onto the Emperor's path of truth. How could he be qualified to take revenge on Dendi? He still had to rely on the Sunset War God. Get into the battle formation. They are coming. Meng Xiang stared ahead and suddenly raised his arm above his head. Roar! Waves of sound came from the void. The 30,000 divine guards shuttled back and forth according to their individual realms and began to arrange themselves into a battle formation in an orderly manner. Nearly 30 Thearch-level divine generals lined up at the back of the divine martial hall. Behind them, more than 200 arch-servants lined up in the middle. Behind the arch-servants were the elite divine guards and low-level divine guards. However, even the lowest-ranking divine guards had comprehended a trace of the power of the human ruler. Apart from a small number of Yuan Venerate reserve candidates who had yet to be fully trained, the rest of the 30,000 divine guards in the nest were basically all human ruler powerhouses. Thus, the scale of this force was overwhelming. The void was very quiet at the moment. Everyone, including the Sunset War God, was waiting respectfully for the arrival of the army commanded by Dendi. Many of the divine guards and divine generals were clenching their fists nervously as they knew that many people would die in this battle. However, the final victor would definitely be the Sunset War God. This was their belief. In the direction of the North Territory, a vast expanse of Emperor light slowly pressed down. Even from a distance, the suffocating feeling made it hard for people to breathe. Within the Emperor light that seemed to cover the sky, Dendi and Qin Hao's silver hair fluttered in the wind. Their hands were clasped behind their backs, and they looked very calm. Dendi wasn't the only one. Behind him, Sword Master, True Polarity, Dao Ancestor Qilin, Zhuiying, Sword Emperor, Phoenix Flower Supremacy Feng Lan, and the other large powerhouses of the various factions also looked very calm. The various factions had been preparing for this battle for a long time. Perhaps many people had been nervous and uneasy before the battle. Even when they were standing on the 100-spirit Dao Peak, they couldn't help but feel apprehensive. They didn't know whether following Dendi was right or wrong. However, today, no one's state of mind would be shaken. They would face everything calmly. Even if they fell, they would face it with a smile. Through the layers of brilliant light, one could see the vast and mighty experts inside. Zhan Wu's tall figure stood in the void. He smiled and stared at the person in front of the countless experts. His silver hair flowed elegantly, and his temperament was restrained and cold. Although his appearance was no longer the same as before, it could not change Dendi's true form. Qin Hao had cultivated again. He had finally returned. Yes, after more than 600 years, almost 700 years, I have finally returned. Hao said quietly. His voice carried an indescribable vicissitude. He stared forward, looking at Zhang Wu, whose body was covered in flowing light. The terrifying light seemed to be able to blind people. After all these years, the strong and dark-skinned young man who used to play with him had now become old. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.